Hey there, storytellers and story lovers. This is Fanfic TV. Prepare yourselves for today's incredible narrative. What if ancient Veela magic bonded Harry to Fleur, Gabrielle, and Apolline Delacour at age 8, creating the most powerful family alliance? A quick reminder: your likes, comments, and subscriptions are the fuel that keeps this channel running. Thank you for being awesome. Let's begin this journey together. Chapter 1. The Awakening Bond. The summer rain fell in sheets across Little Whinging, transforming Privet Drive into a glistening maze of puddles. 8-year-old Harry Potter pressed his nose against the window of his cupboard, watching water stream down the narrow glass panel near the ceiling. The distant rumble of thunder drowned out Uncle Vernon's television program, a small mercy Harry silently appreciated. His stomach growled. Aunt Petunia had sent him to bed without dinner again, punishment for a vase Dudley had broken but blamed on him. Harry had long stopped protesting such injustices. Experience had taught him that arguing only made the punishments worse. A strange tingling sensation suddenly crawled across his skin. Harry rubbed his arms, frowning at the goosebumps that had nothing to do with the damp chill of his cupboard. Something felt different. The air seemed charged, like before lightning struck, but deeper, more intimate, as if the change were happening inside him rather than in the storm outside. "Boy!" Vernon's voice boomed from the living room. "Stop that racket!" Harry hadn't made a sound, but he knew better than to point this out. "Sorry, Uncle Vernon," he called back automatically. The tingling intensified, spreading from his fingers to his chest. Harry's heart began to race, a warm glow building behind his sternum. He pressed a hand against his shirt, startled to feel heat radiating through the threadbare fabric. Was he getting sick? The Dursleys hated when he got sick. The glow intensified, and Harry bit his lip to keep from crying out. It didn't hurt exactly, but the sensation was overwhelming, like being filled with liquid sunlight. His vision blurred, the dingy walls of his cupboard fading as unbidden images flashed through his mind, a magnificent chateau surrounded by lavender fields. Crystal clear water reflecting a cloudless sky. 3 faces, women with silvery blonde hair and eyes that shimmered between blue and silver. "Man, something's happening!" a girl's voice exclaimed in his mind, speaking with an accent Harry couldn't place. "I feel it too, Fleur," responded an older, melodious voice. "Is it magic?" piped up a much younger voice, high and excited. The connection snapped into place with an almost audible click, and Harry gasped. He could feel them, 3 distinct presences now linked to his own, confused, alarmed, but somehow welcoming. The youngest felt like springtime, bubbling with curiosity. The girl called Fleur radiated warmth tinged with caution. The mother exuded strength and protection. Thousands of miles away in the south of France, Apolline Delacour clutched the edge of her marble kitchen counter, her knuckles white as the ancient magic surged through her veins. Her daughters, Fleur and Gabrielle, stood frozen in place, their eyes wide with wonder and confusion. "Man?" Fleur whispered, her voice trembling. At 11 years old, she was just beginning to understand her Veela heritage, but nothing had prepared her for this. "What's happening?" Apolline shook her head, silver blonde hair cascading around her shoulders. "It cannot be," she murmured, more to herself than to her daughters. "The ancestral bond, it hasn't manifested in centuries." 5-year-old Gabrielle tugged at her mother's silk robes. "I see a boy, man. He's small and sad and lives in a dark place." Her lower lip trembled. "Why is he in a cupboard?" Apolline knelt before her youngest, grasping her tiny shoulders. "You can see him, ma petite?" Gabrielle nodded solemnly. "He's scared. His name is—" She closed her eyes, concentrating. "Harry." Fleur gasped, a hand flying to her chest. "I feel him too. But how is this possible? The bond only forms between Veela bloodlines, and only when—" She stopped, her young face paling as centuries of Veela lore clicked into place. "Only when our magic recognizes its complement." Apolline stood, her expression hardening into determination. "Jean!" she called to her husband, who appeared in the doorway, concern etched across his handsome face. "Contact the French ministry immediately." We must go to England. England? Jean's brow furrowed. Apolline, what's... The ancestral bond has awakened. She cut him off, her voice tight with urgency. It has chosen a child in England, a boy named Harry. Jean's eyes widened. But that would mean yes. Apolline's gaze drifted to the window, staring beyond the lavender fields as if she could see across the channel to where this boy waited. Our family line must have crossed with his somewhere in the distant past. The magic has recognized him as ours. Her voice softened. He is meant to be part of our family. In his cupboard, Harry clutched his knees to his chest, overwhelmed by emotions and sensations that weren't entirely his own. Concern. Determination. A fierce protectiveness that made his eyes sting with tears. We're coming. A voice whispered in his mind, the older woman, her tone gentle yet resolute. Hold on, Petit. We're coming for you. Harry didn't understand what was happening, but for the first time in his life, something deep inside him unfurled like a flower reaching for the sun. Hope. The diplomatic quarters of Britain's Ministry of Magic rarely saw visitors after hours, but tonight the night clerk found himself facing a formidable delegation that had arrived via international Fleur. Madame Delacour, he stammered, recognizing the elegant witch at the front of the group. As France's Deputy Minister for International Magical Cooperation, Apolline Delacour was well known in diplomatic circles. We weren't expecting the French delegation until next week's conference. This is not a scheduled diplomatic visit, monsieur. Apolline paused, her silver-blue eyes flickering to the clerk's nameplate. Weatherby, ma'am. Percy Weatherby. He straightened his horn-rimmed glasses nervously. Monsieur Weatherby, I require an immediate audience with your Minister for Magic. It concerns a matter of ancient magical law and the welfare of a British magical child. Behind Apolline stood her husband Jean, along with two stern-faced wizards in the midnight blue robes of France's magical law enforcement. Fleur and Gabrielle flanked their father, both girls uncharacteristically solemn. Percy hesitated, glancing at the ornate clock on the wall. Minister Bagnall is not available at this hour. Perhaps I could schedule. This cannot wait until morning. Jean Delacour interrupted, his voice soft yet commanding. If Minister Bagnall is unavailable, then we must speak with the Chief Warlock or the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Percy swallowed hard. I'll see who I can reach, sir. As the flustered clerk hurried off, Apolline knelt before her daughters. Do you still feel him? She asked quietly. Gabrielle nodded, her small face pinched with concern. He's hungry, ma'am. And his arm hurts where the big boy pushed him. Fleur's expression darkened. These muggles he lives with, they're cruel to him. I can feel his memories. Her hands clenched into fists. How could anyone treat a child this way? That is what we are here to remedy, ma chérie. Apolline brushed a strand of silver blonde hair from Fleur's face. The bond has chosen him, and Veela protect their own. Jean laid a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder. Apolline, we must proceed carefully. British magical law regarding magical guardianship is notoriously complex, especially in cases involving muggles. I am well aware of British law, mon cher. Apolline's smile didn't reach her eyes. But the ancestral bond supersedes national magical regulations. It falls under the Ancient Rights Clause of the International Confederation of Wizards Charter, which Britain ratified in 1692. Even so, removing a magical child from his legal guardians will be entirely justified once we demonstrate the bond's existence and the child's current living conditions. Apolline's voice hardened. I felt his fear, Jean. No child should live in such fear, especially not one connected to our family by magic itself. Their conversation halted as Percy Weatherby returned, looking both harried and impressed. Chief Warlock Dumbledore is on his way, along with Madame Bones from Magical Law Enforcement. They've asked that you wait in Conference Room 3. He hesitated. Might I inquire which magical child has prompted this emergency? Apolline exchanged glances with her husband before answering. Harry Potter. Percy's quill, which had been hovering over a register book, dropped with a splat of ink. Harry P. Potter? The boy who lived? Is that what your people call him? Apolline asked, her tone cooling several degrees. To us, he is simply a child in need, a child who has awakened the Veela ancestral bond with my family. The implications of this statement were clearly lost on Percy, but the gravity of the situation was not. He led them to the conference room with much more deference than before, assuring them that refreshments would arrive shortly. Once alone, Gabrielle tugged at her mother's robes. Will Harry come home with us tonight, Maman? Apolline stroked her youngest daughter's hair. That is my hope, ma petite. But it may not be so simple. It won't be, Fleur stated matter-of-factly. I can feel him getting farther away. He's being moved. Jean and Apolline exchanged alarmed glances. Are you certain? Jean asked. Fleur nodded, her young face serious beyond her years. The connection is stretching. Not breaking, but thinning. Apolline straightened, her Veela heritage momentarily showing through as her eyes flashed silver. Someone knows we're here, she said quietly. And they're attempting to interfere. Albus Dumbledore had been enjoying a particularly challenging book on alchemical theory when the urgent message arrived. Now, as he strode through the Ministry's dimly lit corridors, his mind raced through possibilities, each more troubling than the last. Harry Potter. The Delacour family. An ancient magical bond. If what Percy Weasley had relayed was accurate, this development could upend years of careful planning. The blood wards at Privet Drive, the protective anonymity of a Muggle upbringing, the carefully orchestrated introduction to the magical world that Dumbledore had envisioned for when Harry turned 11, all potentially compromised. Albus. Amelia Bones greeted him at the conference room door, her monocle glinting in the torchlight. This is highly irregular. The French deputy minister demanding an emergency hearing at this hour, concerning Harry Potter of all people. Indeed, Amelia. Dumbledore stroked his silver beard thoughtfully. What do we know of the Delacours? Respected magical family. Old bloodline with Veela heritage. Apolline Delacour has been in diplomatic service for 15 years, with an impeccable record. Her husband Jean manages their family's potion supply business, one of the largest in Europe. And they claim some sort of magical bond with Harry? Amelia's expression remained neutral. An ancestral bond, according to Weatherby's notes. I'm not familiar with the specifics. Few would be. Dumbledore murmured. Veela magic is ancient and poorly documented, by design. They guard their secrets carefully. He straightened his half-moon spectacles. Let us hear what Madame Delacour has to say. They entered the conference room to find the Delacour family seated around the polished oak table. Apolline rose gracefully, her silver blonde hair shimmering even in the subdued lighting. Chief Warlock Dumbledore. Director Bones. She inclined her head respectfully but did not offer her hand. Thank you for responding to our urgent request. Madame Delacour. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled, though his smile did not quite reach them. It has been some years since we last met. The International Alchemical Symposium in Vienna, was it not? Paris, 1981. She corrected smoothly. You were presenting your paper on the 12 uses of dragon's blood. Ah, yes. My memory fails me sometimes. Dumbledore took a seat, his gaze drifting to the two young girls. The older one, Fleur, if he recalled correctly, regarded him with unconcealed suspicion. The younger child simply looked anxious. I understand you have concerns regarding young Harry Potter. Not merely concerns, Chief Warlock. Apolline's tone remained diplomatic, but there was steel beneath the courtesy. 3 hours ago, an ancient Veela magic known as the ancestral bond awakened between my family and Harry Potter. This magic is rare and irrefutable. It creates a connection that transcends distance and cannot be severed. Dumbledore's expression remained placid, though his mind worked furiously. Fascinating. And what, precisely, does this bond entail? The bond recognizes magical bloodlines that were once united and are destined to reunite. Jean Delacour explained, his French accent more pronounced than his wife's. It creates a familial connection that magical law has recognized since before the modern ministry systems were established. More importantly, Apolline continued, it allows us to sense Harry's current state. Her expression hardened. He is being neglected and abused by his Muggle guardians. He sleeps in a cupboard beneath the stairs. He is frequently denied food as punishment. He bears bruises from his cousin's aggression, which his guardians encourage. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. These are serious allegations, Madame Delacour. However, I placed Harry with his mother's sister for very specific protective reasons, blood wards. Apolline cut in. Yes, I am aware of the theory. However, Chief Warlock, you should know that such wards are significantly weakened when the protected individual is mistreated by those providing the protection. Harry does not consider that house a home. He sees it as a prison. Amelia Bones leaned forward. How could you possibly know such details? The younger Delacour girl spoke up unexpectedly. Because I can see through his eyes, madam. And he's scared right now because the large man with the purple face is taking him somewhere in a car, and he doesn't know why. Dumbledore's composure slipped momentarily. Vernon Dursley is moving Harry? At this hour? The bond alerted them to our arrival, Fleur said, her young voice surprisingly authoritative. Someone warned them. All eyes turned to Dumbledore, whose expression revealed nothing. I have monitoring charms at Privet Drive. If Harry were being removed, I would know. Unless, Jean suggested quietly, your monitoring charms were key to detect magical threats from outside, rather than the actions of the Muggles themselves. The momentary silence confirmed his hypothesis. Apolline rose, her patience visibly thinning. We did not come here to debate, gentlemen. Under Section 7 of the Ancient Rights Accord of 1692, we are invoking our right of familial claiming through the ancestral bond. We require immediate authorization to locate and retrieve Harry Potter, who is, by the oldest magic recognized in our world, now part of the Delacour family. Amelia Bones adjusted her monocle. Madame Delacour, while I respect your position, such a claim requires verification by our Department of Mysteries. The boy's placement was legally executed after his parents' deaths. By whom? Apolline challenged. No magical guardian was appointed. No hearing was held. His parents' will was sealed rather than executed. She placed a rolled parchment on the table. Our embassy staff retrieved this from your ministry archives 2 hours ago, a copy of the Potter will, which explicitly states that Harry was never to be placed with Petunia Dursley. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed slightly. The will was sealed for Harry's protection. It was sealed illegally, Apolline countered. And we have already filed an appeal with the ICW to have it formally unsealed and executed. She turned to Amelia. Director Bones, I respect your position, but I must inform you that if Harry Potter is not in our custody by dawn, the French ministry will file formal charges of child endangerment and magical rights violations against Britain before the International Confederation. The diplomatic threat hung in the air. Such charges would be devastating for Britain's standing in the international magical community, especially if the boy who lived was at the center of the controversy. Dumbledore sighed, suddenly looking every day of his considerable age. Perhaps we can reach a compromise that ensures Harry's safety while respecting both British law and this bond you describe. The bond cannot be compromised with, Chief Warlock, Apolline stated flatly. It demands proximity and familial connection. But, she added, her tone softening slightly, we understand Britain's interest in Harry Potter's welfare and education. We are prepared to discuss arrangements that would allow him to attend Hogwarts when he comes of age, with summers and holidays spent with us in France. Amelia Bones tapped her fingers on the table. What proof can you offer of this bond? I mean no disrespect, but such a claim requires more than just your word. Of course. Apolline nodded to her daughters. Fleur, Gabrielle, if you would demonstrate? The girls clasped hands, closed their eyes, and began to speak in unison. Cupboard under the stairs. Number 4, Privet Drive. Now in a car driving north. Uncle Vernon saying, freakishness won't have it. Marge will set him straight. They opened their eyes. He's being taken to someone called Aunt Marge. Dumbledore paled visibly. Marge Dursley. Vernon's sister. You know of this woman? Jean asked sharply. She was assessed as unsuitable for guardianship. Dumbledore admitted reluctantly. She lives alone, breeds bulldogs, and has unfortunate views regarding Harry's parentage. Apolline's eyes flashed dangerously. Then we have no more time to waste on discussion. Director Bones, will you authorize our retrieval of Harry Potter, or must we involve the ICW? Amelia looked to Dumbledore, who after a long moment gave a nearly imperceptible nod. I'll dispatch Oris to intercept Vernon Dursley's vehicle. Amelia decided. If your daughters can continue to provide location details, we should be able to find them quickly. We will accompany your Oris. Apolline stated, not a request. The bond will allow us to locate Harry more efficiently than any tracking charm. Very well. Amelia stood. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Chief Warlock, will you be joining us? Dumbledore hesitated, then shook his head. I believe my presence might complicate matters, given Madame Delacour's concerns about Harry's placement. Please keep me informed, Amelia. As Dumbledore departed, Fleur tugged at her mother's sleeve. He's worried, she whispered. I felt it. He doesn't want us to have Harry. It doesn't matter what he wants. Apolline replied softly. The bond has chosen, and not even Albus Dumbledore can stand against such magic. Harry's stomach lurched as Uncle Vernon took another sharp turn, the car's headlights briefly illuminating a road sign for a motorway. He hadn't been able to see where they were going. Vernon had shoved him into the back seat with a rough, "Not a word, boy," before setting off into the night. It had all happened so quickly. 1 minute Harry had been in his cupboard, experiencing that strange warm connection. The next, Uncle Vernon had yanked the door open, his face an alarming shade of puce. Think you can do your freakishness in my house? He'd hissed, dragging Harry out by his arm. Someone from your lot just called, warned us they're coming for you. Well, they won't find you at Marge's, will they? Harry had no idea who they were or why someone would be coming for him, but a small, hopeful part of him wondered if it had something to do with those 3 presences he'd felt, the ones who had promised to come for him. Uncle Vernon, he ventured cautiously. Who called? Shut it! Vernon snapped, knuckles white on the steering wheel. I've had enough. 7 years of housing you, feeding you, clothing you, and this is how you repay us? Secret freakishness behind our backs? Harry fell silent, watching raindrops race across the window. The strange connection felt stretched now, like a rubber band pulled too thin, but it was still there. He could feel concern flowing through it, and something else, determination? We're coming, whispered the voice of the youngest girl in his mind, fainter now but still audible. Don't be scared. Harry hugged himself tightly. No one had ever come for him before. The Dursleys had made it quite clear that no one wanted him, that his parents had been worthless drunks who'd gotten themselves killed, leaving him a burden on their doorstep. Yet something about these voices felt true in a way nothing in his life ever had. The car swerved suddenly, and Harry was thrown against the door as Vernon pulled onto the shoulder of the road, cursing. Blue lights flashed behind them, a police car. Bloody hell! Vernon muttered, rolling down his window as an officer approached. What now? But it wasn't a police officer who appeared at the window. Instead, a severe-looking woman in what appeared to be a long coat stepped into the beam of the headlights. Behind her came a tall man in similar attire. Vernon Dursley? The woman asked crisply. Uncle Vernon's double chin wobbled as he nodded warily. What's this about? I've broken no laws. I am Director Amelia Bones of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Mr. Dursley, she stated, causing Vernon to recoil as if slapped. You are transporting Harry Potter against established guardianship provisions. Please step out of the vehicle. Now see here, Vernon blustered, his face darkening. The boy is my nephew. We're simply visiting my sister, at 2 o'clock in the morning? Without notification to the authorities? The man beside Director Bones spoke, his voice carrying a French accent. I think not, Monsieur Dursley. Harry pressed his face to the window, hardly daring to believe what was happening. Behind the two officials stood a woman with silvery blonde hair, the same woman from his vision, along with two girls who had to be her daughters. The youngest caught his eye and smiled, giving a small wave. Harry, the woman called, stepping forward. Are you hurt? Before Harry could respond, Vernon snarled. You have no right! The boy was left with us, under conditions you have consistently violated. Director Bones cut in sharply. Mr. Dursley, I suggest you cooperate. We have authorization to remove Harry Potter from your custody immediately. Vernon looked ready to explode, but something in Director Bones's expression made him think better of it. With trembling hands, he unlocked the doors. The blonde woman was there in an instant, opening Harry's door with gentle hands. Harry, she said softly, kneeling to his level. I am Apolline Delacour. Do you remember the connection you felt earlier tonight? Harry nodded, unable to find his voice. That was the ancestral bond, a very special, very old magic that connects my family to yours. She offered her hand. It means you belong with us now, if you wish it. Harry stared at her outstretched hand, scarcely breathing. You want me? Something flickered in Apolline's eyes, a flash of silver that might have frightened Harry if he hadn't felt the wave of protective warmth flowing through their connection. Yes, Harry. Very much. She brushed a lock of unruly black hair from his forehead. You have always been part of our family. The magic simply needed time to find you. From behind Apolline, the two girls stepped forward. The older one, perhaps 11 or 12, had a serious expression but kind eyes. The younger girl, who couldn't be more than 5, beamed at him. I'm Fleur, the older girl said. And this is my sister, Gabrielle. I saw you in the cupboard, Gabrielle announced, as if this were perfectly normal. You don't have to go back there ever again. Harry looked from the girls to their mother, then to Director Bones, who was supervising as another official spoke sternly to Uncle Vernon. What about Aunt Petunia and Dudley? He asked uncertainly. They will be informed of the change in your guardianship, Director Bones assured him. Mr. Dursley will be returning home without you tonight. Vernon, overhearing this, started to protest, but was silenced by a look from the male official. But my things, Harry stammered. Apolline's expression tightened. What things would you like to bring, Harry? Harry thought about the few broken toys he'd salvaged from Dudley's discards, the 2 large hand-me-down clothes, the single thin blanket in his cupboard. He shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. I don't really have anything. A flash of anger crossed Apolline's face before she composed herself. Then we shall provide everything you need. She extended her hand again. Will you come with us, Harry? Harry hesitated only a moment before placing his small hand in hers. The instant their skin touched, the bond surged between them, a rush of warmth and light that made Harry gasp. Fleur and Gabrielle moved forward simultaneously, each placing a hand on Harry's shoulders, completing the circuit. For the first time in his memory, Harry Potter felt what it was to be wanted, to belong. Yes, he whispered, tears stinging his eyes. Please. The Delacour's suite at the Enchanted Embassy, London's premier magical accommodations for foreign dignitaries, was more luxurious than anything Harry had ever seen. Soft carpets, elegant furniture, and warm lighting created an atmosphere so different from the sterile perfection of Privet Drive that Harry found himself afraid to touch anything. Are you hungry, Harry? Jean Delacour asked kindly, noticing the boy's wide-eyed stare. Harry nodded hesitantly, still not quite believing this wasn't some elaborate dream from which he'd wake to find himself back in his cupboard. Mimi, Jean called, and with a soft pop, a house elf appeared, not that Harry knew what a house elf was. He stifled a startled yelp, backing up until he bumped into Fleur, who placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. It's just a house elf, Harry, she explained. Mimi helps take care of us. Young Master Potter, the elf squeaked, her large eyes glistening with tears. Such an honor! What would Master Potter like to eat? Harry looked helplessly at Apolline, completely overwhelmed. Perhaps a simple meal to start, Mimi, Apolline suggested. Warm soup, some crusty bread, and perhaps a light dessert. Right away, mistress. Mimi disappeared with another pop. Gabrielle tugged at Harry's oversized shirt, one of Dudley's cast-offs. Your clothes are all wrong, she declared with a child's blunt honesty. We'll get you better ones tomorrow. Gabrielle, her father admonished gently. Manners. But Papa, they're too big and they have holes. Gabrielle protested. And they make him feel bad. I can feel it. Harry flushed, but Apolline simply nodded. You're right, ma petite. Harry will need a proper wardrobe. She turned to Harry. Tomorrow we will arrange for clothing that fits you properly. Tonight, perhaps we can transfigure these to be more comfortable for sleeping. You can change clothes with magic? Harry asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Of course, Fleur replied, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. Man is excellent at transfiguration. So I'm really a wizard? Harry finally asked the question that had been burning inside him since Director Bones had mentioned magical law enforcement. The Delacours exchanged surprised glances. You didn't know? Jean asked carefully. Harry shook his head. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia always said magic isn't real. They punished me whenever strange things happened around me. Apolline's expression darkened. Those muggles, she muttered before composing herself. Yes, Harry, you are a wizard, and a particularly important one in Britain. Before she could elaborate, Mimi reappeared with a tray laden with food. The aroma of rich soup made Harry's stomach growl audibly. Please eat, Jean encouraged, guiding Harry to the dining table. Questions can wait until you've had nourishment. Harry needed no further prompting. He ate carefully at first, expecting to be stopped or told he was taking too much, but when no reprimand came, his hunger took over. The soup was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted, creamy and filled with vegetables and tender chicken. The bread was still warm, and the chocolate mousse that followed was like nothing he'd ever experienced. As he ate, Gabrielle chatted away, telling him about their home in France, while Fleur occasionally interjected with corrections or additional details. Harry learned that they lived in a chateau in southern France, surrounded by lavender fields and vineyards. Fleur attended Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, where she had just completed her first year. Gabrielle was still too young for formal magical education but had tutors who came to the chateau. You'll have tutors too, Gabrielle informed him matter-of-factly. Because you need to catch up on magic stuff. Gabrielle, Apolline said gently. Harry has had quite enough to process tonight. Let us not overwhelm him with plans for tomorrow. Harry set down his spoon, having finished every last bit of the mousse. Thank you, he said softly. That was the best meal I've ever had. Something flickered in Apolline's eyes, sadness? Anger, but she smiled warmly. You are most welcome, Harry. Now, perhaps it is time for all of you to rest. Tomorrow will be a busy day. Jean showed Harry to a bedroom that seemed larger than the entire ground floor of the Dursleys' house. A four-poster bed dominated the space, with windows overlooking London's magical district. These should fit for tonight, Jean said, transfiguring a handkerchief into soft pajamas with a wave of his wand. The bathroom is through that door. If you need anything during the night, Apolline and I are in the room across the hall. Harry took the pajamas with reverent hands. Mr. Delacour, he began hesitantly. Why did this bond thing choose me? I'm nothing special. Jean knelt, placing his hands on Harry's shoulders. The ancestral bond does not make mistakes, Harry. If it has connected you to our family, then you are meant to be part of it. As for being special, he smiled kindly. We shall have time to discuss your place in the magical world tomorrow. For now, know that you are safe, you are wanted, and you are exactly where you should be. After Jean left, Harry changed into the pajamas, the first clothing he could remember that actually fit him properly. He climbed into the enormous bed, sinking into the soft mattress with a sigh of disbelief. Just as he was drifting off, his door creaked open, and 2 silver blonde heads peeked in. "Harry?" Gabrielle whispered loudly. "Are you sleeping?" "Not yet," Harry whispered back, sitting up. Fleur pushed the door open wider, guiding her younger sister into the room. "We wanted to check on you," she explained. "The bond, it's stronger when we're near each other." As if to prove her point, the now familiar warmth pulsed between them as the girls approached his bed. "Can you feel it too?" Gabrielle asked, climbing onto the foot of his bed without invitation. "The glowy feeling?" Harry nodded. "What exactly is this bond thing?" Your mother said it's old magic, but it's Veela magic," Fleur explained, perching more gracefully on the edge of the mattress. "Our family has Veela blood, magical beings known for their connection to elemental forces. The ancestral bond only forms when bloodlines that were once united are destined to reunite. But I'm not a Veela," Harry pointed out. "I don't look anything like you. The bond doesn't require you to be Veela," Fleur continued. "Only that somewhere in your family tree, one of your ancestors and one of ours were connected. The magic recognizes that old connection and strengthens it when the time is right." "When the time is right," Harry repeated slowly. "Why now? Why not years ago?" Fleur hesitated. "The bond awakens when it's most needed. When all parties involved have something essential to gain from the connection." "I felt you were sad," Gabrielle piped up, moving closer to pat Harry's hand. "Really, really sad. And alone. The bond doesn't like when family is alone." Harry swallowed the lump forming in his throat. "So, what happens now? Do I live with you in France?" "Of course!" Gabrielle exclaimed, as if this were obvious. "You're our brother now, Gabrielle," Fleur chided gently. "The bond doesn't exactly make Harry our brother. It's more complex than that. But he's family," Gabrielle insisted. "And family stays together." Fleur smiled at her sister's simple but accurate assessment. "Yes, he's family. And tomorrow, Maman will begin the formal process of becoming your magical guardian, Harry. There will be complications, I expect." "Complications?" "You're rather famous in the magical world," Fleur explained carefully. "There are people who believe they have a claim on your future." "Famous? Me?" Harry laughed incredulously. "What for?" Both girls stared at him in shock. "You really don't know?" Fleur asked finally. Harry shook his head, bewilderment clear on his face. Fleur glanced toward the door, then back at Harry. "You survived a killing curse cast by the darkest wizard of our time when you were just a baby. The same curse that killed your parents. No one has ever survived it before or since. They call you the boy who lived here in Britain." Harry felt as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. "Killed? My parents were murdered by a dark wizard? But Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia said they died in a car crash." "They lied," Gabrielle said softly, her young face solemn. "Your parents were heroes, Harry. They died protecting you." Harry's eyes burned with unshed tears. All his life, he'd been told his parents were worthless, drunkards who'd recklessly gotten themselves killed. To learn they had died heroes, protecting him, it was too much. The first tear slipped down his cheek, then another. Before he knew it, he was sobbing, great, heaving sobs that shook his small frame. Without hesitation, both Delacour girls moved closer. Gabrielle wrapped her arms around his waist, while Fleur placed a comforting hand on his back. Through their touch, the bond flared, a circuit of warmth and comfort that flowed between the three of them. Harry felt their emotions intertwining with his, Fleur's protective indignation, Gabrielle's simple, unconditional acceptance, and beneath it all, a steady current of something Harry had never truly felt before. Belonging. "We've got you now," Fleur murmured. "You're not alone anymore." As Harry's tears gradually subsided, the door opened again, revealing Apolline. She took in the scene with knowing eyes. "I felt your distress through the bond," she said softly, approaching the bed. "All three of you. They told me about my parents," Harry explained, wiping his face with his sleeve. "How they really died." Apolline sat beside them, the mattress dipping slightly under her weight. I'm sorry you had to learn it this way, Harry. There is much about your past that has been kept from you, unfairly so. Will you tell me everything? Harry asked. The truth? Yes, Apolline promised. Though perhaps not all tonight. Some truths are heavy, and you have carried enough burdens for one day. She gently brushed the hair from his forehead, revealing the lightning-shaped scar. This is where the curse struck you, she explained. The curse that should have killed you, but instead rebounded upon its caster, a dark wizard known as Voldemort. Is he dead, then? This Voldemort? Apolline's expression grew thoughtful. That is a matter of debate in the magical world. His body was destroyed that night, but some believe his spirit survives in some form. This is one of many things we will need to discuss in the days to come. I'm scared, Harry admitted, the confession easier now with the bond flowing between them all. What if I'm not good enough for all this? For your family? For being some famous wizard? Oh, Harry! Apolline cupped his face in her hands. The bond chose you not for what you have done or might do, but for who you are. Your worth is not measured in fame or accomplishments. She smiled gently. And as for being good enough for our family, it is we who must strive to be worthy of you. Through the bond, Harry felt the absolute truth of her words. There was no deception, no hidden agenda, only genuine care and a fierce determination to protect him. Now, Apolline said, rising from the bed. It is late, and all of you need rest. Fleur, Gabrielle, to your rooms, please. The girls reluctantly disentangled themselves from Harry, but not before Gabrielle planted a quick kiss on his cheek. Bonne nuit, Harry, she chirped. See you at breakfast. As they reached the door, Harry called after them. Thank you, he said softly, for finding me. Fleur smiled over her shoulder. We didn't find you, Harry. The magic did. We just followed it home. After they'd gone, Apolline lingered a moment longer. Sleep well, Petit. Tomorrow begins a new chapter for us all. As the door closed behind her, Harry snuggled deeper into the plush bedding, the lingering warmth of the bond wrapping around him like a protective cocoon. For the first time in his memory, Harry Potter fell asleep without fear of what the morning would bring. The following day dawned with a flurry of activity. Harry was awakened by Gabrielle bouncing onto his bed, her silver blonde hair flying around her face like a halo. Wake up, Harry. Maman says we have a busy day, and Papa has already ordered breakfast, and Fleur is being grumpy because she didn't sleep well, but I slept perfect, and Gabrielle. Fleur's voice came from the doorway, tinged with fond exasperation. Let him wake up properly before you overwhelm him. Harry blinked sleepily, momentarily disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, and with them, the warm pulse of the bond connecting him to the Delacour family. Good morning, he said shyly, sitting up and reaching for his glasses on the bedside table. Bonjour, Fleur replied with a small smile. Breakfast is ready when you are. Mimi left fresh clothes for you in the bathroom, nothing fancy, just temporarily transfigured until we can shop properly. Harry slipped into the bathroom to find neatly folded clothes waiting for him, simple trousers and a soft blue shirt that, when he tried them on, fit perfectly. The sensation of wearing clothes that actually fit was so novel that Harry spent several moments just looking at his reflection in amazement. When he emerged, both girls were waiting to escort him to breakfast. Gabrielle immediately took his hand, while Fleur led the way to the dining room, where Jean and Apolline were already seated at a table laden with food. Ah, there you are, Jean greeted warmly. I trust you slept well? Harry nodded, taking a seat between Fleur and Gabrielle. Better than ever, he admitted. Thank you for the clothes. Merely a temporary solution, Apolline assured him, passing him a plate of croissants. We have an appointment at Twilfit and Tattings this afternoon for a proper wardrobe. Harry's eyes widened at the breakfast spread before him, croissants, fruit, yogurt, eggs prepared in a way he'd never seen before, and juices of different colors. Tentatively, he helped himself to a little of everything, still half expecting to be told he was taking too much. Harry, Apolline began once he'd started eating. We have several matters to address today. First, the British Ministry has requested a formal examination of the ancestral bond to verify its authenticity. Is that bad? Harry asked between bites of the fluffiest eggs he'd ever tasted. Not at all, Jean assured him. The bond signature is unmistakable to those trained to recognize such magic. The examination is a formality, one we anticipated. After that, Apolline continued, we must visit Gringotts, the Wizarding Bank, to address matters regarding your inheritance. My inheritance? Harry set down his fork in surprise. I have an inheritance? Fleur made a small, indignant noise. Those muggles told you nothing. She muttered. The Potters were an ancient and wealthy family, Harry. Jean explained gently. Your parents would have left provisions for you. As your magical guardians, we'll need to ensure those provisions are being properly managed until you come of age. Harry struggled to process this information. Not only was he a wizard, not only were his parents heroes rather than wastrels, but they had left him an inheritance as well. There's something else you should know, Apolline added, her expression turning more serious. Last night, after you were asleep, we received a visit from Albus Dumbledore. The chief warlock from the Ministry? Harry asked, remembering the name from the previous night's events. Apolline nodded. He is also the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the magical school here in Britain. It was Dumbledore who placed you with the Dursleys after your parents' death. Harry's appetite suddenly diminished. Why? Why would he put me there if my parents were magical? He claimed it was for your protection, Jean said, his tone carefully neutral. Your mother's sacrifice created a powerful protective magic, which Dumbledore believed could be maintained through your blood connection to Petunia Dursley. Some protection, Fleur muttered darkly. Living in a cupboard, being starved. Fleur, Apolline admonished gently, though her eyes reflected similar sentiment. What did Dumbledore want? Harry asked quietly. To negotiate, Apolline replied. He proposed that you remain under British magical jurisdiction, with us serving as your host family rather than full guardians. He suggested you might split your time between France and Britain, returning to the Dursleys each summer to maintain the blood wards. Harry's heart sank. Do I have to go back there? Absolutely not, Jean stated firmly. The bond supersedes any arrangement Dumbledore might have made. You are now legally and magically part of our family, Harry. However, Apolline added cautiously, there are political complications to consider. You are, for better or worse, a figure of significant importance in British wizarding society. Your defeat of Voldemort made you a symbol of hope during dark times. But I was just a baby, Harry protested. I didn't do anything. The truth rarely matters in politics, Jean said with a rueful smile. What matters is perception, and the perception is that you are Britain's hero, their boy who lived. Which is why, Apolline continued, we have proposed a compromise. You will live with us in France, becoming part of our family in every way that matters. When you reach 11, you will have the option to attend either Beauxbatons or Hogwarts. The choice will be entirely yours. And I never have to go back to the Dursleys? Harry confirmed, hardly daring to hope. Never. All four Delacours replied in unison, the bond between them pulsing with protective determination. Harry's throat tightened with emotion. Thank you, he whispered. There is no need for thanks between family, Apolline said gently. Now, finish your breakfast. We have a busy day ahead. As they ate, Jean explained more about the wizarding world to Harry, about the Ministry of Magic, about the different magical schools across Europe, about the International Confederation of Wizards where Apolline frequently represented France. Is that why you were in England? Harry asked. For a Confederation meeting? Not exactly, Jean admitted. Apolline was scheduled to attend a diplomatic conference next week, but we arrived early for private business. The adults exchanged a glance that Harry couldn't quite interpret. We were meeting with a specialist at St. Mungo's, the wizarding hospital here in London. Apolline explained after a moment. Regarding Gabrielle's health. Harry turned to the youngest Delacour in concern. Are you sick? Gabrielle shook her head vigorously. Not sick. Just special. Gabrielle was born with an unusual magical sensitivity. Fleur explained, her usual confidence faltering slightly. Her Veela heritage manifested early and intensely. It can be overwhelming for her at times. Apolline added softly. The specialist at St. Mungo's has developed techniques to help young witches and wizards with heightened magical sensitivity manage their abilities. Is that why you can see through my eyes? Harry asked Gabrielle directly. The little girl nodded. I feel things more than most people. Maman says it's a gift and a challenge. The bond has actually helped stabilize Gabrielle's condition. Jean noted with a hint of wonder. Since it formed last night, her magical aura has been more balanced than we've seen in months. That's good, right? Harry looked between the adults. Very good. Apolline confirmed. It seems the bond is benefiting all of us in ways we're only beginning to understand. After breakfast, Harry was introduced to magical transportation for the first time, specifically, the Fleur network. Despite Jean's careful instructions, Harry's first attempt ended with him stumbling out of the ministry fireplace covered in soot, much to Gabrielle's giggling delight. Don't worry. She consoled him, helping brush ash from his shoulders. I fall every time too. The Department of Mysteries, where the bond examination was to take place, was unlike anything Harry could have imagined. Dark stone corridors led to a circular room with multiple identical doors, which somehow knew where they needed to go, rotating until the correct door faced them. The unspeakable who greeted them wore robes of midnight blue with silver symbols embroidered around the edges. Her face was partially obscured by an enchanted hood that seemed to shift and swirl, making her features difficult to focus on. Madame Delacour, she acknowledged with a nod. I am Unspeakable Croaker. I'll be conducting the verification today. They were led to a small, octagonal room with a raised dais in the center. Strange instruments lined the walls, silver devices that whirred and puffed, crystals that glowed with inner light, and what appeared to be a small model of the solar system rotating slowly in a corner. Please stand here, Croaker directed, indicating positions on the dais for Harry, Apolline, Fleur, and Gabrielle. The process is painless but may feel intense. The bond will be visible to our instruments when properly stimulated. Harry nervously took his position between Fleur and Gabrielle, with Apolline completing their circle. Jean remained at the edge of the room, watching closely. Join hands, Croaker instructed. As their hands clasped, forming an unbroken circuit, the bond surged between them, stronger than ever before. Harry gasped as warmth flooded through him, radiating from his core to his fingertips. Around them, the instruments in the room began to react, the silver devices spinning faster, the crystals glowing brighter. Croaker moved around them, waving her wand in intricate patterns while murmuring incantations too soft for Harry to catch. Shimmering threads of golden light began to materialize between them, connecting Harry to each of the Delacour women with pulsing strands of magic that seemed to beat in time with their hearts. Extraordinary, Croaker murmured. The ancestral bond is not only present but fully formed. This usually takes months to solidify, yet yours appears to have established completely in less than 24 hours. Is that unusual? Jean asked from his position by the wall. Highly, Croaker confirmed, still circling them. The last documented case of an ancestral bond this powerful was in 1738, between the Shafik and Fawley families. She paused, studying the golden threads with fascination. Even more intriguing, the bond appears to be affecting Mr. Potter's existing magical signatures. Existing signatures? Apolline questioned sharply. Croaker hesitated, then approached Harry, her wand hovering near his forehead without quite touching the lightning scar. There is another magical presence here. Old, powerful, and dark. Her voice lowered. A residue, perhaps, from that night. Harry felt Fleur's hand tighten around his, felt Gabrielle press closer to his side. Through the bond, he sensed their alarm, followed quickly by a fierce protectiveness. The bond is actively counteracting it, Croaker continued, sounding impressed. Creating a sort of buffer between Mr. Potter and this residual magic. She straightened, addressing Apolline directly. This bond may be doing more than connecting your families, Madame Delacour. It may be providing young Mr. Potter with additional protection against dark influences. The examination continued for another half hour, with Croaker documenting the bond's characteristics while explaining its likely effects. The ancestral bond would strengthen with time and proximity, she explained. It would create a form of empathic connection, allowing them to sense each other's emotions, especially strong ones. In times of danger or distress, they would be able to locate each other across considerable distances. The bond has chosen wisely, Croaker concluded as they prepared to leave. My report to the Ministry will confirm the legitimacy and exceptional strength of the ancestral bond between Harry Potter and the Delacour family. Under the Ancient Rights Clause of the International Confederation Charter, this bond legally supersedes all previous guardianship arrangements. Relief washed through their connection as they exited the Department of Mysteries, the tension Harry hadn't realized he'd been carrying finally releasing from his shoulders. It's official now, Fleur told him, a rare full smile lighting her face. You're truly one of us. What did she mean about the dark magic in my scar? Harry asked as they made their way through the Ministry atrium. Jean and Apolline exchanged troubled glances. Something we will need to investigate further, Apolline said carefully. But not today. Today, we focus on establishing your new life. Their next stop was Gringotts, where Harry encountered goblins for the first time. The Grand Marble Bank was intimidating, but the Delacours guided him with confident familiarity. The Potter account manager, please, Apolline requested at the main counter. We are here regarding Harry Potter's inheritance, with newly established guardianship papers from the Ministry. The goblin peered down at Harry with calculating eyes. And does Mr. Potter have his key? I know, Harry admitted. I didn't know I had a vault. The goblin's eyes narrowed further. Identity verification will be required. Follow me. They were led to a private office where an older goblin named Gornick awaited them. After examining the Ministry papers and performing a magical verification of Harry's identity, involving a drop of blood on a special parchment, Gornick's demeanor shifted from suspicious to respectfully businesslike. Mr. Potter's trust vault has remained active since his parents' deaths, Gornick explained, consulting a thick ledger. However, the main Potter family vault has been sealed until Mr. Potter reaches his majority or his magical guardian specifically requests an audit. We are requesting such an audit, Jean stated firmly. As Mr. Potter's new guardians, we need to ensure his inheritance has been properly maintained. Gornick nodded, making a note in the ledger. The audit will take several days to complete. In the meantime, would Mr. Potter like to visit his trust vault? A new key can be created, as the previous one appears to be elsewhere. Harry looked to Apolline, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, please, he said. The cart ride to his vault was both terrifying and exhilarating, plunging through the underground tunnels at breakneck speed while Gabrielle shrieked with delight beside him. When the vault door opened, Harry could only stare in stunned silence at the piles of gold, silver, and bronze coins that filled the space. This is all mine? He whispered. Your trust vault, Gornick corrected. Replenished annually from the main Potter estate until you reach 17. It is intended to cover your educational and personal expenses until you inherit the primary estate. Fleur squeezed his shoulder. You see? Your parents made sure you would be provided for. After collecting a reasonable sum for immediate expenses, Harry had no concept of wizarding currency, so he gratefully deferred to Apolline's judgment. They returned to the bank's upper levels. One last matter. Apolline addressed Gornick as they prepared to leave. We would like to establish a secure communication protocol between Gringotts London and Gringotts Paris regarding Mr. Potter's accounts. As he will be residing primarily in France, this will facilitate any necessary transactions or consultations. Gornick regarded her with something approaching approval. A prudent request, Madame Delacour. The appropriate forms will be prepared for your signature before you depart. Their final stop of the day was Twilfit and Tattings, a high-end wizarding clothing shop in Diagon Alley. Harry, who had never owned new clothes in his life, was overwhelmed by the attention lavished upon him by the shop's proprietor. A complete wardrobe, you say? Madame Twilfit fussed, circling Harry with a measuring tape that moved of its own accord. Casual wear, formal attire, seasonal options, yes, we can certainly accommodate. And with your coloring, young man, I would suggest emerald green to bring out those eyes. What followed was 2 hours of being measured, fitted, and draped in more fabric types than Harry knew existed. Fleur appointed herself his fashion consultant, vetoing options that didn't meet her exacting standards, while Gabrielle entertained herself by trying on increasingly ridiculous hats when she thought no one was looking. By the end of the fitting, Harry had more clothes on order than he'd ever imagined owning: everyday robes, Muggle-style clothing, formal attire, sleepwear, outer robes for different weather conditions, and even a set of traditional French wizarding attire that Apolline insisted would be necessary for certain social functions. All of this will be delivered to the embassy suite this evening, Madame Twilfit assured them. The basic essentials are packaged for you to take now, of course. As they exited the shop, bags of Harry's new essentials floating behind them, charmed by Jean to follow like obedient puppies, Harry finally voiced the question that had been building all day. Is all of this really necessary? It seems like a lot. Apolline paused, kneeling to his level despite being on a busy street. Harry, for 7 years you have been denied the basic necessities and comforts that every child deserves. You have worn ill-fitting hand-me-downs, slept in a cupboard, and been treated as a burden rather than a treasure. Her voice remained gentle, but her eyes flashed silver with emotion. So yes, this is necessary, not because of extravagance, but because you deserve to be properly clothed, properly housed, properly educated, and properly loved. Through the bond, Harry felt the absolute truth of her words, the fierce maternal protectiveness that drove them. For the first time, he didn't question whether he deserved such care. He simply accepted it, allowing the warmth of belonging to wash through him. Now, Apolline continued, rising gracefully, I believe a celebratory dinner is in order. Jean has reserved a private room at the Silver Spoon, one of the finest magical restaurants in London. And tomorrow, Gabrielle added excitedly, bouncing on her toes, we go home to France. You'll love the chateau, Harry. There are gardens and a lake and flying horses in the stables. Flying horses? Harry repeated incredulously. Abraxans, Fleur explained with a smile. They're a specialty of our region. As they made their way through Diagon Alley, Harry suddenly realized he was smiling, not the careful, guarded smile he perfected at the Dursleys to avoid trouble, but a genuine expression of happiness. Through the bond, he felt answering waves of contentment from the 3 Delacour women, creating a harmonious circuit of shared joy. For the first time in his memory, Harry Potter wasn't just surviving, he was beginning to live. The Silver Spoon was unlike any restaurant Harry had ever seen, though, to be fair, the Dursleys had never taken him to restaurants. Crystal chandeliers floated beneath a ceiling enchanted to look like a starlit sky. Tables were spaced far apart for privacy, each surrounded by a gentle ambient glow that somehow made conversations inaudible to neighboring diners. Their private room was even more impressive, a circular space with windows that appeared to overlook Paris, though they were clearly still in London. A fountain bubbled in the center of the room, the water changing colors in a soothing rhythm. This is one of my favorite establishments in London, Jean commented as they were seated. The chef trained under Nicholas Flamel himself, centuries ago. Flamel? Harry questioned, unfamiliar with the name. The famous alchemist, Fleur explained. He's over 600 years old now, thanks to his work with the Philosopher's Stone. Harry's eyes widened. People can live that long with magic? It's extremely rare, Apolline clarified. Flamel is unique in achieving such longevity. Most wizards and witches live longer than Muggles, perhaps 150 years with good health, but immortality remains elusive to all but Flamel. The conversation flowed easily as they dined on exotic magical cuisine, dishes that changed flavor with each bite, desserts that floated above the plate, and beverages that sparkled with actual miniature fireworks. Harry tried everything offered to him, discovering tastes he'd never imagined possible. As they were finishing their meal, however, an unexpected visitor approached their table. "Madame Delacour," came a silky voice from the doorway. What a fortuitous encounter! A tall man with long platinum blonde hair stood there, leaning slightly on a silver-topped cane. His aristocratic features were set in a polite smile that somehow failed to reach his cold gray eyes. "Lord Malfoy," Apolline acknowledged with a diplomatic nod. "I was not aware you frequented the Silver Spoon." "Only on special occasions," Malfoy replied smoothly, his gaze shifting to Harry with unconcealed interest. "And this must be young Mr. Potter. News of your unusual guardianship arrangement has spread quickly through certain circles." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the restaurant's temperature. Through the bond, he sensed Fleur's immediate dislike and Gabrielle's instinctive withdrawal. Apolline's emotions were more controlled, but there was a wariness there that put Harry on alert. "Harry is now part of our family through the ancestral bond," Apolline stated, her tone remaining pleasant but cooling noticeably. "A rare blessing that we are still celebrating together." "Indeed. Most unexpected." Malfoy's gaze lingered on Harry's scar. "I wonder if you fully appreciate the political implications of bringing Britain's most famous wizard into a French family, Madame Delacour?" Jean set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "We appreciate your concern, Lord Malfoy, but I assure you that our family is well versed in international magical politics. The bond's formation was neither planned nor politically motivated. It was magic itself that chose to connect our families." Of course. Malfoy demurred, though his expression suggested skepticism. "Still, many in British magical society will have questions about Mr. Potter's future. His education, his eventual role in our society, his connections to certain historical events." Harry felt Apolline's protective instincts flare through their bond a moment before she rose to her full height, which, while not particularly imposing physically, carried an unmistakable aura of power. "Harry's future is now intertwined with the Delacour family," she stated, her accent becoming more pronounced as her emotions intensified. "His education will be determined by what best serves his needs and abilities. As for historical events," her gaze flickered meaningfully to Malfoy's left forearm, "perhaps some questions are better left unasked by certain parties." A flash of something, anger? Fear, crossed Malfoy's face before his aristocratic mask returned. "Merely expressing the concerns of a patriotic citizen, Madame Delacour. Britain has invested much in young Mr. Potter's legacy." "I don't understand." Harry spoke up, unable to contain his curiosity despite the tension. "What does Britain want from me? I didn't do anything special." Malfoy's lips curled into a thin smile. "On the contrary, Mr. Potter. Your very existence represents a particular interpretation of magical history that many find comforting. Your removal from British soil might be seen as challenging that interpretation." "Lord Malfoy," Jean interrupted, his tone pleasant but firm. "While this philosophical discussion is fascinating, we are in the middle of a family celebration. Perhaps a more appropriate time could be arranged if you wish to discuss Anglo-French magical relations?" Recognizing the dismissal, Malfoy inclined his head slightly. "Of course. My apologies for the intrusion." His cold eyes fixed on Harry once more. "Welcome to the magical world, Mr. Potter. I suspect it will be more complex than you might have been led to believe." With that cryptic statement, he departed, leaving behind an uncomfortable silence. "Who was that?" Harry asked finally. "And why did he care about where I live?" Apolline and Jean exchanged glances before Apolline sighed. "Lucius Malfoy is an influential figure in British magical politics, wealthy, connected to the oldest families, and with significant sway at the Ministry. He was also," Jean added more quietly, "rumored to be a supporter of Voldemort during the war, though he claimed to have been under magical compulsion and was ultimately cleared of all charges. He didn't like us," Gabrielle stated simply, her young face uncharacteristically solemn. His insides don't match his outsides. An apt description, ma petite. Apolline agreed, ruffling her youngest daughter's hair. Lord Malfoy represents a faction of British society that values blood purity and tradition above all else. Your defeat of Voldemort, Harry, made you a symbol opposing their ideology. Our guardianship removes you from their sphere of influence, which they will not appreciate. Will he cause trouble for us? Harry asked anxiously. He may try, Jean acknowledged. But the Delacour family has its own political influence, and more importantly, the bond gives us legal standing that even Lucius Malfoy cannot challenge. Besides, Fleur added with surprising fierceness, we protect our own. If Malfoy or anyone else tries to harm you, they'll have to get through all of us first. Through the bond, Harry felt the absolute truth of Fleur's statement, a protective determination that flowed from all three Delacour women. For the first time in his life, Harry understood what it meant to have a family willing to fight for him. The rest of the evening passed more pleasantly, though Harry remained thoughtful. As they prepared to return to the embassy suite, he tugged gently on Apolline's sleeve. Madame Delacour, Apolline, please, Harry, she corrected gently. Or whatever you feel comfortable calling me. Harry nodded, gathering his courage. Apolline, am I going to cause problems for your family? Because of who I am? Apolline knelt to his level, her silver blue eyes meeting his green ones directly. Harry, listen carefully. You are not a problem or a burden. You are a gift, one that magic itself has bestowed upon our family. She touched his cheek gently. Whatever complications arise, we will face them together, as a family. The bond chose us for each other, and I believe with all my heart that it chose wisely. As they left the restaurant, Harry walked between Fleur and Gabrielle, each holding one of his hands. The bond hummed contentedly between them, a constant reminder that he was no longer alone. Tomorrow they would leave for France, for his new home. There would be challenges ahead, complications from both his fame and the unusual nature of his guardianship. But for the first time in his memory, Harry faced the future not with dread but with something new and precious. Hope. Chapter 2, New Beginnings. The private portkey activated with a jerk behind Harry's navel, the world dissolving into a whirlwind of color and sound. He clung desperately to Apolline's hand as they spun through space, Gabrielle's excited squeals somewhere to his right nearly drowned out by the rushing in his ears. Then his feet slammed into solid ground. Only Apolline's steady grip kept him from sprawling face first onto what appeared to be a gravel path. Harry's stomach lurched violently, his glasses askew. First portkey is always the worst, Jean assured him, looking completely unfazed by the magical transportation. You'll get used to it. I still hate them, Fleur admitted, smoothing her windswept hair with practiced motions. Brooms are much more civilized. Harry adjusted his glasses and finally looked up. The breath caught in his throat. Before him stood the Delacour Chateau, the same magnificent building he'd glimpsed in his first vision when the bond had awakened. 3 stories of pale golden stone gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight, with elegant turrets at each corner. Tall windows reflected the sky, and flowering vines climbed portions of the facade. A wide staircase of white marble led to massive double doors of dark, polished wood. Welcome home, Harry, Apolline said softly. Home. The word resonated through the bond, carrying echoes of belonging that made his chest tighten with emotion. It's beautiful, he whispered. Wait until you see inside. Gabrielle tugged his hand, practically vibrating with excitement. And the gardens, and the stables, and my room has a ceiling that shows real stars, and Gabrielle. Jean chuckled. Perhaps we should allow Harry to actually enter the house before the complete tour? Harry barely registered their banter, still absorbing the reality of his situation. Just 3 days ago, he'd been locked in a cupboard at Privet Drive, another miserable night in a lifetime of misery. Now he stood before a chateau in southern France, connected by ancient magic to a family who actually wanted him. Are you well, Harry? Fleur asked, noticing his stunned silence. I'm just. He swallowed hard. It doesn't seem real yet. Understanding flowed through the bond from all three Delacour women. Without words, Apolline gently placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him forward while Fleur and Gabrielle flanked him protectively. As they approached the chateau, the massive doors swung open of their own accord. Two house elves wearing neat blue uniforms with silver trim bowed deeply. "Welcome home, masters and mistresses," they chorused. "Welcome to young Master Potter." "Thank you, Lisette Pascal," Jean acknowledged warmly. "Has everything been prepared as requested?" "Yes, Master Jean," the female elf, Lisette, confirmed eagerly. "Young Master Potter's chambers are ready, and refreshments await in the East Salon. The family arrives at 7 for dinner as instructed." Harry's step faltered. "Family?" Apolline smiled reassuringly. "My mother and sister are joining us for dinner. They are eager to meet you." Sensing his anxiety through the bond, she added, "They already know about the ancestral bond and are coming to welcome you, not to question or judge." The entrance hall took Harry's breath away again, soaring ceilings with intricate paintings of mythological scenes, a grand staircase curving up to the upper floors, and marble floors inlaid with what appeared to be constellations that actually twinkled. "The east wing will be yours," Jean explained as they climbed the staircase. "Connected to Fleur and Gabrielle's rooms through a shared sitting area. Apolline and I are in the west wing, but the magical monitors will alert us if you need anything during the night." Harry could only nod, overwhelmed by the grandeur around him. Even the Hogwarts headmaster, Dumbledore, whom they'd met briefly before leaving England, hadn't lived in such elegance. They paused before a door of dark wood inlaid with a pattern of lilies and phoenixes intertwined. Apolline gently pushed it open, revealing a suite that made Harry's jaw drop. A large four-poster bed draped in deep blue stood against one wall, flanked by tall windows overlooking lavender fields that stretched to distant mountains. A sitting area with comfortable chairs surrounded a fireplace of white marble. Bookshelves lined another wall, already partially filled with volumes. A desk stood by the window, complete with what Harry recognized as wizarding stationery. Two more doors led off the main chamber, one to a private bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, the other to a spacious dressing room where Harry's new wardrobe had already been arranged. "This is for me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Of course," Apolline confirmed. "Though if anything isn't to your liking, we can change it." "It's perfect," Harry whispered, running his fingers along the carved bedpost. "But it's too much. I don't need all this space." "It's not about need, Petit," Apolline explained gently. "It's about providing you with a space that is truly your own, something you've never had before." Through the bond, Harry felt her sincerity, her genuine desire to give him this sanctuary. Slowly he nodded, acceptance replacing his instinctive resistance. "Thank you," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "The sitting room connects your chambers to ours," Fleur explained, opening a door Harry hadn't noticed. Beyond lay a cozy space with comfortable sofas, more bookshelves, and a smaller fireplace. Two additional doors presumably led to Fleur and Gabrielle's rooms. "For when you can't sleep and want company," Gabrielle added, as if sharing a secret. "I have nightmares sometimes, and Fleur lets me stay with her." "You're welcome to do the same," Fleur told Harry, surprising him with her directness. "The bond, it can make separation uncomfortable at first. Being close helps. We've learned from Gabrielle's experiences that bonds of magic can be demanding, especially during sleep when our conscious minds aren't maintaining control." Jean elaborated. "There may be nights when proximity is necessary for comfort." Harry nodded, oddly relieved by the arrangement. The thought of being alone in the massive bedroom, no matter how beautiful, had been slightly daunting after years in a cramped cupboard. "Why don't you settle in and rest before dinner?" Apolline suggested. "The Portkey journey can be taxing, especially your first time." After they left, Harry sat on the edge of his new bed, running his hand over the silky coverlet in wonder. A soft pop announced the arrival of one of the house elves, Lisette, carrying a tray with a pitcher of cool water and a light snack. "Is young master needing anything else?" she asked, setting the tray on a small table. "No, thank you," Harry replied, still uncomfortable with being served. Lizette? May I ask you something? The elf's large eyes widened further. Of course, young master. What are the Delacours like? As a family, I mean. Are they? He struggled to phrase his concern. The best family in France, Lizette declared proudly. Kind to elves, respected by wizards, feared by dark ones. Mistress Apolline is fair but fierce. Master Jean is wise and generous. Young mistresses grow strong in their magic. Her expression softened. They have waited for you, young master, even before knowing. The bond has been searching many years. Searching? Harry echoed, puzzled. Lizette nodded sagely. Old magic knows. Veela magic remembers what wizard magic forgets. With another bow, she disappeared before Harry could ask what she meant. Exhausted from the day's journey, Harry lay back on the bed, intending only to rest his eyes for a moment. He fell into a deep sleep almost instantly, the bond humming contentedly as he surrendered to its gentle embrace. Harry awoke to soft knocking and Gabrielle's voice calling his name. Disoriented, he sat up, momentarily forgetting where he was until the splendor of the room reminded him. Coming, he called, sliding off the enormous bed. He'd slept in his clothes, he realized with embarrassment. Opening the door revealed Gabrielle in a pretty blue dress, her silver blonde hair arranged with ribbons. Dinner soon! Maman says to wear your new blue robes, the ones with silver trim. Harry glanced at the grandfather clock near his bed. He'd slept for nearly 2 hours. Thanks, Gabrielle. I'll change right away. I'll wait and show you to the dining room, she offered, skipping into his sitting area and perching on a chair, swinging her legs. The blue robes Gabrielle had mentioned hung in his dressing room, along with a bewildering array of other garments. Harry changed quickly in the bathroom, marveling at how the robes adjusted themselves subtly as he put them on, ensuring a perfect fit. When he emerged, Gabrielle clapped her hands in approval. You look like a real wizard now. Come on, Grandmere and Tondelice are already here. Harry followed her through corridors lined with magical paintings whose subjects nodded or waved as they passed. The bond felt different here in the chateau, stronger, more resonant, as if the very walls amplified its power. The house has been in Maman's family for 12 generations, Gabrielle chattered as they walked. It has special magic for Veela. Makes our powers stronger. Veela have special powers? Harry asked, realizing how little he knew about his new family's heritage. Gabrielle nodded importantly. We can do fire magic without wands when we're angry. And we can fly, not with brooms, with wings. But only full Veela get wings. I'm 1/4, so probably no wings for me. She sounded disappointed. That's amazing, Harry said sincerely. Can your mother transform? And Fleur? Maman can, but she says it's undignified. Fleur is trying to learn. She can make feathers appear on her arms when she's really, really angry. Gabrielle leaned closer, whispering. I saw her practicing in the garden once. She made a rosebush catch fire by accident. They arrived at tall double doors that opened as they approached, revealing a dining room that, while grand, felt surprisingly intimate. A table that could have seated 20 was set for only 7, with place settings clustered at one end beneath a magnificent crystal chandelier. 4 people were already seated, Jean, Apolline, Fleur, and 2 women Harry hadn't met. One was clearly Apolline's mother. She had the same silvery hair, though shorter and with elegant streaks of platinum. The other woman was younger, perhaps in her 20s, with Apolline's features in a slightly more angular face. All conversation stopped as Harry entered. The elderly woman rose first, moving with surprising grace to stand before him. So, she said, her accent thicker than Apolline's, this is the young wizard who has awakened the ancestral bond. Her eyes, more silver than blue, studied him intently. I am Celestine Delacour, Apolline's mother. Harry bowed slightly, as Jean had instructed him earlier. It's an honor to meet you, Madame Delacour. A smile transformed Celestine's austere features. Politeness. Good. But you will call me Grandmere, as the girls do. She touched his cheek gently. Yes, I see it now. The old blood. It has been waiting a long time to return to us. Before Harry could ask what she meant, the younger woman approached. I'm Elise, Apolline's sister. She introduced herself with a warm smile. Or Tante Elise to you now, I suppose? Harry has had a busy few days. Apolline interjected, gesturing toward the table. Perhaps we could continue introductions over dinner? The meal that followed was unlike any family dinner Harry had experienced. Course after delicious course appeared, served by Lisette and Pascal with impeccable timing. The conversation flowed easily, often in a mixture of English and French, with family members good-naturedly translating whenever they switched languages around Harry. You must begin French lessons immediately, Celestine declared, sampling a glass of deep red wine. A Delacour must speak proper French. I've arranged for a tutor starting next week, Apolline assured her mother. Along with preliminary magical education and cultural studies. So young? Elise questioned, glancing at Harry. Most children don't begin formal magical education until 11. Harry's situation is unique, Jean explained. The bond has accelerated his magical development. Waiting until 11 would be problematic. I can feel it. Celestine nodded sagely. His magic has been constrained too long. Those muggles. Her expression darkened momentarily. Well, that is past. Now we must prepare him properly. Prepare me for what? Harry asked, finding his voice. The adults exchanged glances before Apolline answered carefully. For the role you will inevitably play in both British and French magical society, Harry. Your connection to our family, combined with your unique status in Britain, creates both opportunities and challenges. You mean because of Voldemort? Harry said bluntly, causing a momentary hush around the table. Partly, Jean acknowledged. But also because the ancestral bond itself is politically significant. It hasn't manifested between British and French families since before the International Statute of Secrecy was established in 1692. The bond transcends political boundaries, Celestine added, studying Harry with her piercing silver eyes. It forms only when bloodlines that were once united are destined to reunite, when magic itself recognizes a need for balance that can only be achieved through such union. But how am I connected to your family? Harry asked the question that had been nagging at him. I thought my father's family was purely British. That is something we are researching, Apolline replied. Family histories, especially magical ones, are complex. Somewhere in your lineage and ours, there was a connection, one significant enough for the bond to recognize centuries later. The Potter family is ancient, Elise added, dating back to the time of Merlin, if some accounts are to be believed. And our line is equally old. There were many periods when British and French magical families intermarried, particularly during the time of Eleanor of Aquitaine. Harry absorbed this information, trying to reconcile the foundling from the cupboard with this talk of ancient bloodlines and magical destiny. Will I still go to Hogwarts? He asked suddenly, remembering Apolline's compromise with Dumbledore. If you wish to, Apolline confirmed. Though Beauxbatons would also welcome you. The choice will be yours when the time comes. But that is years away, Fleur interjected. For now you will learn here with us. Celestine set down her wine glass with a decisive clink. The bond must be nurtured first. It is still new, still forming. Distance would strain it unnecessarily at this stage. I've already arranged for Harry's British magical guardian papers to be transferred to the French Ministry, Jean assured his mother-in-law. The compromise with Dumbledore gives Harry the option of Hogwarts at 11, but until then, he remains exclusively under our guardianship. Good. Celestine nodded approvingly. The old wizard meddles too much. Always has. You know Dumbledore, Grandmere? Harry asked, surprised. A mysterious smile played across Celestine's lips. I am nearly a century-old, child. There are few figures in European magical politics I have not encountered. Her silver eyes twinkled. Albus and I have disagreed on many occasions. Mother served on the International Confederation of Wizards for 40 years, Apolline explained. She and Dumbledore represented opposing viewpoints on many issues. He believes in the greater good, Celestine said, her accent making the phrase sound like a curse. I believe in the sanctity of family and tradition. Oil and water, as the Muggles say. The conversation shifted to plans for Harry's education, with Apolline outlining a comprehensive program that made his head spin. French language lessons, magical theory, basic wand work, Veela history and customs, wizarding etiquette, flying lessons, all scheduled to begin within the week. It sounds like a lot, Harry admitted anxiously. We will proceed at whatever pace suits you, Jean assured him. The goal is not to overwhelm but to help you discover your potential. And the bond will help, Fleur added. It naturally facilitates the transfer of knowledge between connected individuals. You may find you absorb French more quickly than expected, for instance. Is that how Gabrielle knew about my cupboard? Harry asked. The bond let her see my memories? A shadow crossed Apolline's face. In times of strong emotion, yes, the bond can transmit images, memories, even sensations. Gabrielle's natural empathic abilities make her particularly receptive. What other abilities might the bond create? Harry wondered aloud. That remains to be seen, Celestine responded, leaning forward with interest. Each manifestation of the ancestral bond is unique to the individuals involved. In some historical cases, it has enabled shared magical strength, allowing connected individuals to cast spells beyond their individual power. In others, it has granted forms of telepathic communication or shared sensory perception. The bond will reveal its gifts in time, Elise added gently, noting Harry's overwhelmed expression. For now, focus on settling into your new home and routine. As dinner concluded with a spectacular floating souffle that changed flavors with each spoonful, Harry found himself relaxing into the warm atmosphere of family. The conversation flowed around and included him without pressure or expectation. No one stared at his scar or asked about Voldemort. No one treated him as either a burden or a celebrity. They simply treated him as Harry, a new addition to a family that already loved him. After dessert, they retired to a comfortable sitting room where a magical harp played softly in the corner without a musician. Gabrielle promptly curled up beside Harry on a plush sofa, while Fleur sat nearby with a book, occasionally glancing up to follow the adults' conversation. The British Ministry sent another inquiry today, Jean informed Apolline quietly, though not quietly enough to escape Harry's attention. Fudge is insisting on a formal visitation schedule. Apolline's expression hardened slightly. The bond supersedes their jurisdiction. They have no legal right to demand visitation. It's not about legality but politics, Elise pointed out. Britain's magical hero now lives in France. Their pride is wounded. Let them nurse their wounded pride, Celestine said dismissively. The boy stays here until the bond is fully stabilized. How long will that take? Harry asked, drawing the adult's attention. Celestine considered him thoughtfully. For most ancestral bonds, stabilization requires 6 to 12 months of consistent proximity. However, she closed her eyes briefly, as if sensing something invisible. Yours is unusually powerful, forming more rapidly than any I've witnessed. Perhaps as little as 3 months, if properly nurtured. And after that? Harry pressed. After that, separation becomes more tolerable, Apolline explained. Though regular contact will always be necessary to maintain the bond's health. So I could visit Britain sometimes? See friends? Not that Harry had friends in Britain, but the possibility suddenly seemed important. Of course, Jean assured him. Once the bond stabilizes, short visits would be possible. And as you grow older, the tolerance for distance will increase naturally. We're not trying to isolate you from Britain, Harry, Apolline added gently. Only to ensure that your connection to that country is on your terms, not dictated by political expedients. Harry nodded, relieved. Though he had no particular attachment to Britain after his treatment at the Dursleys, the idea of being forbidden from returning had unsettled him. Choice, having options, was still a novel concept after years of having none. As the evening progressed, Harry found himself growing drowsy. The combination of the portkey journey, emotional exhaustion, and excellent food taking its toll. He tried to stifle a yawn, not wanting to appear rude, but Gabrielle, already half asleep against his side, gave him away. "I think the children have had quite enough excitement for one day," Apolline observed with a smile. "Fleur, would you show Harry back to his rooms? Your father and I need to discuss a few matters with Grandmere and Tante Elise." Fleur closed her book immediately, rising with grace that Harry envied. "Come, Harry. Gabrielle is already dreaming." Indeed, the youngest Delacour had fallen fully asleep, her silver blonde head resting against Harry's shoulder. Jean gently lifted his daughter, who mumbled something in French, but didn't wake. "Good night, Harry," Celestine said, surprising him by rising to place a formal kiss on each of his cheeks. "Welcome to the family, Petit Fils." "Thank you, Grandmere," Harry replied, the French term feeling strange but right on his tongue. As he followed Fleur from the room, Harry heard Celestine's voice, pitched low but clear. "The scar must be addressed, Apolline. I sensed it immediately, dark magic, contained but not dormant." The door closed before he could hear Apolline's response, but Fleur's slight tensing suggested she'd heard as well. She said nothing, however, guiding him through the chateau's corridors with silent efficiency. "Fleur," Harry ventured as they reached the east wing, "what did Grandmere mean about my scar?" Fleur paused, considering him with an expression too mature for her 11 years. "The bond allows us to sense magic, especially in those we're connected to," she explained carefully. "Grandmere has the strongest sensitivity among us. If she senses dark magic in your scar, it is likely true." "But what does that mean?" Harry pressed, unconsciously touching the lightning-shaped mark. "I don't know exactly," Fleur admitted, her usual confidence faltering. "But I do know that Maman and Papa will find answers. And whatever it is, the bond is already helping. I can feel it creating a barrier of sorts between you and the darkness." She touched his arm lightly, the bond warming at the contact. "Don't worry tonight, Harry. You're safe here." Harry nodded, drawing comfort from her certainty. As they reached his chambers, Fleur hesitated. "If you need anything during the night, my room is through the sitting room, first door on the left. Gabrielle's is on the right." She met his eyes directly. "The first night in a new place can be disorienting. Don't hesitate to wake me if you feel uncomfortable." "Thank you," Harry said sincerely, touched by her concern. Then, impulsively, "I'm glad the bond chose your family, Fleur. I can't imagine a better one." A rare, full smile transformed Fleur's normally serious face. "Nor can I imagine a better addition to it," she replied softly. "Bonne nuit, Harry." That night, as Harry lay in his enormous new bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the French countryside through his partially opened window, he felt a peace he'd never known before. The bond hummed gently in his consciousness, a constant reminder that he was no longer alone. For the first time in his memory, Harry Potter fell asleep without fear, without hunger, without loneliness, wrapped instead in the protective embrace of a family that wanted him, a magic that had chosen him, and a future filled with possibilities he was only beginning to imagine. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of new experiences. True to Apolline's word, Harry's education began almost immediately, a carefully structured program designed to introduce him to the magical world while addressing the gaps in his Muggle education. Monsieur Lefebvre, a dignified wizard with a neat silver beard, arrived each morning to instruct Harry in French. To everyone's amazement, Harry's progress was remarkably swift, another apparent effect of the bond. "It is as if the language already exists within you," Monsieur Lefebvre observed after Harry mastered basic conversational French in just 2 weeks. "The bond is activating dormant knowledge, perhaps carried in the magical signature of your ancestors." The first challenge had been Harry's resistance to accepting help, a defense mechanism developed during his years with the Dursleys. Accustomed to being punished for asking questions or showing aptitude, he initially hesitated to fully engage with his lessons. "You must not fear excellence here, Harry," Jean had explained gently during their third tutoring session, after noticing Harry deliberately holding back during magical theory exercises. In this house, your abilities are cause for celebration, not punishment. Gradually, Harry's natural intelligence and curiosity emerged. He proved particularly adept at practical magic, even before receiving his own wand. Using Jean's wand for basic levitation and color-changing exercises, he demonstrated an intuitive understanding that impressed his tutors. The boy has remarkable potential, Madame Tremblay, his magical theory instructor, informed Apolline after a month of lessons. His core is unusually strong for his age, likely a combination of his natural talent and the bond's enhancement. Wand selection proved an unexpected challenge. Rather than visit Ollivanders in Britain, or the French equivalent, Apolline arranged for a wand maker to visit the chateau directly, a dignified witch named Madame Dubois who specialized in custom creations. The bond creates unique magical resonances, she explained, laying out an assortment of woods and cores on a silk cloth in the chateau's library. A pre-made wand would likely be insufficient. Harry watched in fascination as Madame Dubois instructed him to pass his hand over the materials, noting which ones produced the strongest reactions. Hollywood responded immediately, glowing softly under his fingers. Among the cores, however, there was confusion. Phoenix feather and Veela hair both reacted strongly, causing sparks when Harry touched them. Curious, Madame Dubois murmured. A dual-core wand is extremely rare, but in this case... She studied the reactions carefully before nodding decisively. Yes, it must be both. The Phoenix feather represents your individual magic, while the Veela hair resonates with the bond. Where will you get Veela hair? Harry asked, glancing toward Fleur who had insisted on observing the selection process. Madame Dubois smiled. Traditionally, when a wand requires Veela hair, it comes from a family member of the witch or wizard who will wield it. It strengthens the connection between wand and wielder. Without hesitation, Fleur stepped forward. I would be honored to provide the hair for Harry's wand. The wand maker nodded approvingly. The bond will make such a wand extraordinarily powerful in your hands, Mr. Potter. It may take me 2 weeks to craft properly. This combination will require special handling. When the wand was finally ready, the entire Delacour family gathered to witness Harry's first attempt. 11 inches of polished holly, inlaid with subtle silver patterns reminiscent of feathers, felt warm and right in Harry's hand the moment Madame Dubois presented it to him. Holly with dual core, phoenix feather, and Veela hair freely given. The wand maker announced formally. A wand of protection and connection, suited for defensive magic and transformative spells. When Harry gave it an experimental wave, silver and gold sparks erupted from the tip, swirling around the room in a double helix pattern before forming, just for an instant, the silhouette of a phoenix in flight. Gabrielle clapped in delight, while Fleur smiled, a faint glow emanating from her as the bond resonated with Harry's magic. A perfect match. Madame Dubois declared, clearly pleased with her creation. Care for it well, Mr. Potter. This wand may surprise even you with its capabilities. Beyond academics, Harry's days filled with other new experiences. Flying lessons with Jean revealed another natural talent. Harry took to the air with instinctive skill that left his instructor laughing in amazement. Just like your father, Jean remarked as Harry executed a perfect barrel roll during his 3rd lesson. At Harry's startled look, he elaborated. I met James Potter once, at an international Quidditch exhibition. He flew for the British amateur team, remarkable talent. I see he passed it to you. The casual mention of his father, delivered without the hushed reverence or pitying tones Harry had encountered from others, was a gift. Jean spoke of James Potter as a man with skills and personality, not just a tragic figure or heroic legend. It made Harry's father feel real for the first time. More precious still were the photos Apolline somehow procured, a small album containing wizarding photographs of James and Lily Potter. Harry spent hours watching his parents wave and smile from the enchanted images, occasionally joined by Fleur or Gabrielle, who would sit quietly beside him as he absorbed these tangible connections to his past. They look happy, Gabrielle observed simply, pointing to a photo of James spinning Lily in an autumn leaf shower, both laughing. They loved each other very much. Yes, Harry agreed, his throat tight. They did. The bond itself continued to develop in unexpected ways. As Celestine had predicted, its strength increased rapidly, allowing for increasingly sophisticated connections between Harry and the three Delacour women. The first major development occurred during Harry's third week at the chateau. During breakfast, he'd suddenly looked up from his croissant with alarm. "Fleur's upset," he announced, startling the adults. "Something about a letter." Moments later, Fleur had indeed stormed into the dining room, clutching a crumpled parchment, and radiating anger so intense that the flowers on the table withered slightly. "Claudine Renaud is spreading rumors about the bond," she fumed, tossing the letter before her mother. "She told everyone at Beaux Batons that we've enslaved Harry for his fame and fortune." Apolline scanned the letter, her expression darkening. "I see. And how did you know this, Harry?" "Fleur was in her room when she received this." Harry frowned, uncertain himself. "I just felt it. Not just that she was angry, but why. I could see the letter in my mind." "Impressive," Jean murmured. "Emotional transference with specific detail at a distance of several rooms." Similar incidents followed. During a particularly challenging French lesson, Harry had struggled with irregular verbs until, suddenly, the correct conjugations appeared in his mind, accompanied by a distinct sense of Apolline's presence. Later, he'd awakened from a nightmare about the cupboard to find Gabrielle at his bedside, having felt his distress through the bond despite being asleep herself moments earlier. Most dramatic was the incident during Harry's first visit to the Delacour vineyards. While exploring the wine cellars with Jean, Harry had suddenly staggered, clutching his hand with a cry of pain. "Fleur's hurt," he gasped, certain without knowing how. "Kitchen knife accident." Jean had operated them both to the chateau immediately, where they found Apolline attending to a deep cut on Fleur's palm, exactly as Harry had described. "The bond is creating a form of sympathetic connection," Celestine explained that evening, having been summoned to observe the phenomenon. "More advanced than simple empathy, you're experiencing actual sensory sharing. Is that normal?" Harry asked, still disturbed by the experience of feeling Fleur's pain as his own. "Normal is not a useful concept with ancestral bonds," Celestine replied wryly. "Each manifestation is unique. However, this level of connection typically takes years to develop. Yours has achieved it in weeks. Is that good?" Harry glanced at Fleur, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the incident. "It is neither good nor bad, it simply is," Celestine said. "Though it will require training to control. You cannot function effectively if you are constantly experiencing each other's physical and emotional states." Thus began a new aspect of Harry's education, a clemency and mental discipline, taught by Celestine herself. The techniques were challenging, requiring Harry to visualize barriers that could selectively filter the bond's connections without damaging its integrity. "Think of it as adjusting the flow of water through channels," Celestine instructed during their first lesson. "Not damming the river, merely controlling its course and volume." Harry struggled initially, his attempts at mental barriers either too weak to block anything or so rigid they caused discomfort to all four bond participants. Surprisingly, it was Gabrielle who provided the breakthrough. "You're trying too hard," she told him during a particularly frustrating session. "The bond isn't an enemy to fight. It's like holding hands. You can hold tight when you need to, and loose when you don't, but you don't let go." Her simple analogy clicked. Harry began visualizing the bond not as a flood to be contained but as four hands linked in a circle, able to tighten or loosen their grip without breaking contact. His progress accelerated dramatically after that. By the end of his second month at the chateau, Harry could maintain a comfortable level of connection, aware of the other's general emotional states, but not overwhelmed by them, able to open deeper connections when desired but otherwise maintaining healthy boundaries. The political aftermath of Harry's move to France proved as complicated as Jean had predicted. Weekly owls arrived from the British Ministry, each more insistent than the last, requesting everything from formal visitation schedules to Harry's participation in ministry events. They seem to forget you're 8 years old, not a diplomatic asset. Apolline remarked irritably after the fourth such request. Minister Fudge is particularly persistent. More concerning were the articles appearing in the British magical press. Rita Skeeter, a journalist for the Daily Prophet, had written a series of inflammatory pieces questioning whether the boy who lived has been lured away by foreign influences, and speculating wildly about Veela enchantments and international conspiracies. Absurd, Jean declared, tossing the latest paper aside. Though unfortunately effective in stirring public sentiment. Should I make a statement? Harry asked, surprising the adults with his political awareness. Tell them I'm happy here. Apolline considered this thoughtfully. A statement might help, but it would also establish a precedent of you responding to press inquiries, something I'd rather avoid until you're older. Perhaps a compromise, Jean suggested. A single photograph and brief statement through official channels, the French and British ministries simultaneously. No direct press access, no interviews. After careful consideration, they arranged a formal portrait of Harry with the Delacour family, accompanied by a simple statement. Harry Potter wishes to inform the magical communities of Britain and France that he is well and happy with his new family, connected by the ancient ancestral bond. He looks forward to maintaining connections with both countries as he grows and learns in a safe, loving environment. He asks for privacy during this important transitional period. The statement, released with the approval of both ministries, temporarily quelled the more outrageous speculation. However, it also attracted attention from less official quarters. The first concerning incident occurred 3 months after Harry's arrival in France. While visiting a magical market in the nearby village with Apolline and Gabrielle, Harry had sensed a strange, prickling awareness, like being watched. Through the bond, he felt Apolline's immediate alertness, her casual browsing stance belied by the subtle shift of her wand into a ready position. Stay close, she murmured, her hand finding Harry's shoulder. Gabrielle, hold your brother's hand. Harry's heart warmed at being called Gabrielle's brother, even as he registered the danger in Apolline's tone. Gabrielle complied immediately, her small hand slipping into his as her eyes darted around the marketplace. Someone bad is watching, she whispered, her enhanced sensitivity picking up what Harry had only vaguely detected. Let's continue our shopping normally, Apolline directed calmly, though Harry felt her casting wordless protective spells around them. Jean and the security team are already responding. Only then did Harry notice the subtle movements around the marketplace. 2 wizards in plain robes who had been browsing nearby shelves now positioning themselves strategically near exits, a witch at a cafe table whose casual posture belied the wand ready beneath her newspaper. Security team? Harry questioned quietly as they moved through the market. Did you think we would be careless with your safety? Apolline replied with a small smile. The Delacour family has maintained security personnel for generations. Recent circumstances simply warranted additional precautions. They completed their shopping without incident, though Harry remained aware of the unseen watcher's presence until they returned to the chateau's protected grounds. Only then did Apolline's posture relax. Who was it? Harry asked as they entered the safety of the entrance hall. Unknown, Jean replied, having received reports from the security team. They maintained magical concealment, and withdrew when our personnel approached. However, he exchanged a glance with Apolline. The magical signature was British. The incident prompted increased security measures around the chateau and during any excursions. Harry found himself both touched by the family's protectiveness and frustrated by the limitations it imposed. I don't want to be kept in a gilded cage, he confided to Fleur during one of their now regular evening discussions in the shared sitting room. I spent 7 years locked away at the Dursleys. Fleur, who had returned from Beauxbatons for the summer holidays, considered his words carefully. There is a difference between imprisonment and protection, Harry. No one here wishes to control you, only to keep you safe until you can protect yourself. But how long will that take? Harry pressed. I'm learning magic, yes, but I'm still years away from being able to defend myself against adult wizards who might want to harm me. True, Fleur acknowledged. But you're not alone anymore. The bond gives you advantages most wizards lack. She held out her hand, demonstrating by creating a small flame that danced on her palm, a manifestation of her Veela heritage. Our magic is different, connected. When the time comes, you'll have not just your power but ours as well. Harry nodded, somewhat reassured. The bond did provide comfort beyond mere emotional connection. During his lessons, he discovered that certain spells came more easily when he consciously drew on the bond, allowing Apolline's precision, Fleur's intensity, or Gabrielle's intuitive approach to guide his own magic. More than security concerns, what troubled Harry were the occasional flare-ups from his scar. Several times he'd awakened in the night with the lightning mark burning, fragments of disturbing dreams clinging to his consciousness, shadows and whispers, a high, cold laugh, flashes of green light. After the third such incident, Apolline had taken him to a specialist, not at St. Mungo's, but a discreet French magical healer who specialized in curse damage. There is definitely residual dark magic, Healer Devereux confirmed after extensive examination. Unlike anything I've encountered before, not a traditional curse, but a kind of magical fragment. Can it be removed? Jean asked, his usual calm demeanor strained with concern. Devereux hesitated. Not safely at present. It appears to be deeply intertwined with Mr. Potter's own magical signature. Attempting extraction could cause significant damage. He studied the diagnostic images glowing above Harry's head. However, the ancestral bond appears to be creating a natural containment. The dark magic is unable to spread or influence beyond the scar itself. So the bond is protecting me? Harry asked. Precisely. Devereux nodded. I would recommend continuing to strengthen the bond while we research more targeted treatment options. In the meantime, occlumency training should help manage any pain or disturbing dreams. True to the healer's prediction, as Harry's occlumency skills improved, the nightmares and pain diminished. The bond seemed to function as both shield and filter, allowing Harry to set aside the darkness touching his scar without suppressing his own emotions or memories. Life at the chateau settled into a pleasant rhythm as summer progressed. Harry's days filled with lessons, exploration of the extensive Delacour grounds, and gradual integration into Veela culture and traditions. Weekends often brought visits from Celestine or Elise, or excursions to magical sites around France. One sunny afternoon in late July, Apolline approached Harry as he practiced basic shield charms in the garden, supervised by his defense instructor. I've just received an owl from Britain, she informed him once his lesson concluded. Apparently, the magical world there celebrates your birthday quite significantly. July 31st is considered something of an unofficial holiday, Harry Potter Day, commemorating your defeat of Voldemort. Harry groaned, embarrassed by the very idea. That's ridiculous. I was a baby. I didn't do anything special. Apolline smiled gently. Perhaps not consciously, but the fact remains that something extraordinary happened that night, something that brought hope to many people during dark times. Still, Harry muttered, celebrating a day when my parents died seems wrong. I agree, Apolline said, surprising him. Which is why I've declined all official invitations for you to appear at British celebrations. Her expression softened. However, your actual birthday should still be a joyful occasion. We were hoping you might share your thoughts on how you'd like to celebrate turning 9. Harry stared at her, momentarily speechless. The Dursleys had never acknowledged his birthday except to remind him how burdensome his existence was. The concept of celebrating, of being asked his preferences, was entirely foreign. I don't know, he admitted finally. I've never really had a birthday party. Something flashed in Apolline's eyes, that now familiar flicker of protective anger that appeared whenever Harry's past treatment was mentioned. Through the bond, he felt her quickly suppressing the emotion, replacing it with warm determination. Then your first true birthday celebration should be special, she declared. Perhaps a small gathering? We could invite a few children your age, Fleur and Gabrielle's cousins, perhaps some of the children from the village. The thought of meeting new people, potential friends, both excited and terrified Harry. At the Dursleys, Dudley had ensured Harry remained friendless, threatening any child who showed him kindness. Here in France, there was no Dudley, but there was the complication of Harry's fame and the language barrier, despite his improving French. "Maybe something smaller this year?" he suggested hesitantly. "Just family?" Apolline nodded, understanding flowing through their connection. "Of course. We can expand social circles gradually, at your comfort level." She smiled warmly. "Family it shall be, though I warn you, Gabrielle has already been planning decorations for weeks. Expect extravagance." Extravagant barely began to describe the celebration that materialized on July 31st. Harry awoke to find his room transformed. Floating golden balloons that changed color when touched, streamers that danced through the air like playful serpents, and magical photographs from his months with the Delacours arranged in a collage on one wall. Breakfast featured all his favorite foods, including treacle tart, a British dessert that Jean had specially researched after Harry mentioned enjoying it once. The entire family wore celebration robes, with Gabrielle sporting a hat that periodically shot harmless magical fireworks from its pointed top. "Happy birthday, Harry!" she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him the moment he entered the dining room. Through the bond, her pure, uncomplicated joy washed over him like sunshine. Gifts appeared throughout the day, each thoughtfully selected. Jean and Apolline presented him with his own broomstick, a junior model of the popular Clean Sweep, enchanted with additional safety features but capable of impressive speed and maneuverability. "For proper flying lessons," Jean explained with a wink. "The school brooms have served their purpose, but talent like yours deserves proper equipment." Fleur's gift was a handcrafted wand holster of supple leather, embossed with protective runes and the combined Potter Delacour family crests. "For quick access," she explained practically. "A wizard should never be without his wand." Gabrielle had created a storybook, filled with her childish drawings of Harry's adventures since joining their family, from his first port-key journey to his wand selection, his flying lessons to their trips to magical markets. Each page featured animated illustrations that moved when touched, showing Harry's gradual transformation from the solemn, thin child who had arrived to the more confident, healthier boy he was becoming. "So you never forget," she explained solemnly. "Even when you're old like Papa." Jean pretended offense at being called old, prompting laughter around the table. Celestine and Elise arrived for lunch, bearing their own gifts, a set of ancient magical texts from Celestine. Family grimoires, passed through generations. "It is time you learned our history." And a magical camera from Elise, to create new memories, now that you have something worth remembering. The emotional impact of the day caught Harry by surprise. Each gesture, each carefully chosen gift, each shared laugh reinforced the profound change in his life. Through the bond, he felt the genuine affection behind each moment, not obligation or pity, but real caring. That evening, as they gathered for a spectacular dinner featuring dishes from both British and French magical traditions, an unexpected owl arrived bearing a small package wrapped in emerald green paper. "From Hogwarts," Jean noted, examining the seal. "Specifically from Albus Dumbledore." Harry accepted the package cautiously. His feelings toward Dumbledore remained complex. The man had placed him with the Dursleys but had also, according to Apolline, genuinely believed it was for Harry's protection. Their few brief interactions had left Harry uncertain what to make of the powerful wizard who had shaped so much of his early life. Inside the package lay a fluid, silvery cloth that seemed to ripple like water in Harry's hands. An invisibility cloak. Apolline identified it, her eyebrows rising in surprise. And an exceptionally powerful one at that. A note accompanied the gift. "Your father left this in my possession before he died. It is time it was returned to you. Use it well. A very happy birthday to you, Harry." "Albus Dumbledore, my father's?" Harry whispered, running his fingers over the silky material with newfound reverence. "Invisibility cloaks are rare and valuable," Jean noted, examining the cloak with professional interest. "Most lose their power over time, becoming less effective with each passing year. This one, however, appears pristine despite its age. A connection to your heritage." Apolline observed gently. Despite our differences with Dumbledore, this was a thoughtful gesture. Harry nodded, cradling the cloak carefully. While he now had photographs and stories of his parents, tangible connections to them remained precious few. This direct link to his father, something James Potter had actually owned and used, felt like a treasure beyond price. The day concluded with a French magical tradition, the ceremony of light. As darkness fell, the family gathered in the chateau's garden. Each person held a specially crafted candle that, when lit, would reveal a wish or blessing for Harry's coming year. Jean went first, lighting his candle with a silent spell. Above the flame appeared the shimmering image of a book opening, its pages filling with writing. "Knowledge and wisdom to guide your path," he explained. Apolline followed, her candle producing the image of a shield surrounded by a glowing aura. "Protection and strength, in magic and spirit." Fleur's candle revealed crossed wands emitting sparks. "Skill and confidence in your growing abilities." Gabrielle's showed a simple heart that beat with golden light. "Love and happiness," she declared proudly. "Because that's the most important magic." Celestine and Elise added their own blessings, courage and discernment respectively, before Apolline handed the final, largest candle to Harry himself. "This one reveals not a wish for you, but a truth about you," she explained. "Light it, and see what magic recognizes in your core." Harry hesitated before touching his wand to the wick. What if the candle revealed something dark or troubling? What if the shadow in his scar manifested for all to see? As if sensing his worry, Fleur placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, the bond warming between them. "Trust yourself, Harry." "We do." Taking a deep breath, Harry lit the candle. For a moment nothing happened, then the flame shot upward, far higher than any of the others had done. Above it formed not a single image but three intertwined symbols: a stag standing proud, a phoenix with wings outstretched, and a swirling pattern of fire and light that Harry somehow knew represented the Veela essence. "Past, present, and future," Celestine murmured, her silver eyes reflecting the magical light. "Your father's protection, your own resilient spirit, and the bond that now guides your path forward. A powerful combination, child." As the candles burned down, their magical images fading into the summer night, Harry felt a sense of completion he'd never experienced before. The orphan boy from the cupboard had found not just a home, but a heritage, connections to both the past he'd lost and the future he was building. Through the bond, he felt answering echoes from Apolline, Fleur, and Gabrielle, their pride, their affection, their absolute acceptance of him as part of their family. No longer was he merely the boy who lived, a title bestowed for something he couldn't even remember. Here, he was simply Harry, grandson, nephew, brother, son, valued for himself rather than his legend. That night, as he carefully placed his father's invisibility cloak in the ornate chest at the foot of his bed, Harry realized something profound. The ancestral bond hadn't just given him a new family, it had given him a sense of identity, a foundation upon which to build his own story, separate from both the neglect of the Dursleys and the expectations of the wizarding world. For the first time, Harry Potter wasn't defined by his past. He had a future, one filled with possibilities, connections, and the unconditional support of a family that had chosen him as surely as he had chosen them. The bond hummed contentedly as he drifted to sleep, its golden warmth a promise that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would never face them alone again. Autumn brought new developments. As Fleur returned to Beauxbatons for her second year, Harry's educational program intensified. His natural magical abilities, enhanced by the bond and nurtured by excellent instruction, began to blossom remarkably. "He's progressing at twice the expected rate," Madame Tremblay reported during a monthly assessment meeting with Apolline and Jean. "His practical wand work is already approaching second-year level, though his theoretical understanding needs to catch up." "The practical always comes easier to me," Harry admitted. "I can feel how the magic should flow, especially when I tap into the bond." Madame Tremblay nodded thoughtfully. "That intuitive approach serves you well now, but as you advance to more complex magic, the theoretical foundation becomes crucial. Understanding why spells work the way they do will allow you to adapt and create rather than simply replicate. Following her recommendation, Harry's curriculum expanded to include advanced magical theory and beginning arithmancy, subjects normally reserved for older students but necessary to provide the framework for his rapidly developing practical skills. The distance from Fleur proved challenging for the bond, though less severely than they had initially feared. Each evening, Harry, Apolline, and Gabrielle would gather in the family's private sitting room, consciously strengthening their connection to include Fleur despite the physical separation. These sessions created a temporary bridge, allowing them to sense each other's presence across the hundreds of miles between the chateau and Beauxbatons. "I can see the castle through her eyes," Gabrielle reported during one such session, her own eyes closed in concentration. "It's raining there." "Fleur is in the library, studying potions." Harry, also focused on the connection, nodded. "She's worried about an essay." "Something about moonstone properties?" Apolline smiled approvingly. "Your ability to maintain specific details across distance is improving. When the bond first formed, you could only sense general emotions at such range." These regular connection sessions served another purpose. They helped stabilize Gabrielle's still developing control over her enhanced empathic abilities. With Fleur away at school, Gabrielle had initially struggled, becoming overwhelmed by the emotional input from those around her without her sister's steadying presence. The bond creates balance. Celestine had explained during a consultation. 4 points of connection, for different magical signatures harmonizing. With Fleur distant, the triangle is less stable, particularly for Gabrielle, whose natural sensitivity already makes her vulnerable to overload. Harry had taken this explanation seriously, redoubling his efforts during their evening sessions and making himself available whenever Gabrielle's empathic senses became overwhelmed. The youngest Delacour, in turn, helped Harry refine his own developing sensitivity, teaching him techniques she'd learned for filtering emotional input. Their growing connection created an interesting dynamic, part sibling relationship, part magical partnership. Despite the age difference, they supported each other's development in complementary ways, Gabrielle's intuitive understanding balancing Harry's more structured approach. "You think too much," she would tell him when he struggled with a particularly intuitive piece of magic. "Feel it instead." "You feel too much," he would counter when helping her with basic magical theory. "Think about why it works, not just how it feels." Together, they made remarkable progress, their mutual support accelerating both their development. Jean observed this phenomenon with fascination, documenting it for the family's private archives on the ancestral bond. "The symbiotic nature of their magical development is unprecedented," he noted in his journal. "Traditional magical education assumes a primarily individual progression, with occasional collaborative elements." Harry and Gabrielle's advancement, however, appears fundamentally interconnected, each breakthrough by one creating a corresponding advancement for the other. This interconnection extended to Fleur as well, despite the distance. Her letters reported unexpected improvements in her own magical control, particularly regarding her Veela heritage. "The transformation is becoming easier to control," she wrote in early October. "Yesterday during dueling practice, I was able to manifest partial Veela characteristics, enhance reflexes and sensory perception, without triggering the more volatile fire aspects." Professor Maxime was most impressed and asked if I'd been receiving special training at home. The most significant development, however, came from an unexpected direction. During Harry's weekly occlumency session with Celestine, he'd been practicing advanced visualization techniques, creating increasingly sophisticated mental architecture to organize and protect his thoughts. "Excellent," Celestine approved as Harry successfully repelled her gentle probe into his surface thoughts. "Now, focus on the bond itself. Visualize its connections while maintaining your shields." Harry complied, closing his eyes and focusing inward. The bond appeared in his mind's eye as golden threads connecting 4 distinct magical cores: his own emerald green, Apolline's deep sapphire, Fleur's silvery blue, and Gabrielle's pearlescent white. As he studied the intricate weave of these connections, he noticed something unexpected: a 5th presence, a dark shadow clinging to the edge of his own magical signature. "What is that?" he asked, alarmed, unconsciously pulling back from the visualization. Celestine's eyes narrowed. What did you see, child? Harry described the shadow, watching as understanding dawned in Celestine's expression. The fragment in your scar, she confirmed grimly. Your increasing mental discipline has allowed you to perceive it directly. She studied him intently. This could be significant. If you can see it, you may be able to better contain and eventually neutralize it. This discovery led to a modification in Harry's occlumency training, now focusing not just on general mental shields, but on specifically isolating and containing the dark fragment. Think of it as quarantine. Celestine instructed. We cannot safely remove it yet, but we can ensure it remains separate from your core self. The new approach proved remarkably effective. As Harry learned to consciously reinforce the boundary between his own magic and the fragment, his occasional nightmares decreased dramatically. The scar pain, once unpredictable, now only occurred when his concentration lapsed significantly, typically during deep sleep or moments of extreme emotion. More intriguingly, as the isolation of the fragment became more complete, Harry discovered he could occasionally sense impressions from it, not just pain or fear, but flashes of memory that clearly weren't his own. I saw a castle, he reported during one session. Not Hogwarts or Beauxbatons, darker, more forbidding. And a massive snake, larger than any I've seen in books. Celestine documented these impressions carefully, sharing them with Apolline and Jean during private consultations that Harry wasn't privy to. He could sense their concern through the bond, though they tried to shield him from the full extent of their worry. In late November, an unexpected visitor arrived at the chateau, Nicholas Flamel, the ancient alchemist Jean had mentioned during Harry's birthday dinner. Harry was summoned from his lessons to meet the legendary wizard in Apolline's private study. Flamel proved to be surprisingly ordinary in appearance, a man who looked perhaps 60 despite his centuries of life, with kind eyes and an air of serene wisdom. Young Mr. Potter, he greeted Harry warmly. A pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard much about your unique situation from the Delacours. It's an honor, sir, Harry replied, somewhat awed to be meeting someone who had been alive during Merlin's time. I've been reading about your work in advanced potions theory. Flamel chuckled. Advanced studies indeed for one so young. But then, the ancestral bond often accelerates development. His expression grew more serious. I understand you've been experiencing some unusual mental phenomena related to your scar? The adults exchanged glances before Apolline nodded encouragingly. You may speak freely with Nicholas, Harry. He is here to help. Harry described his recent discoveries, the visualization of the dark fragment, the increasing control he developed, and the occasional foreign memories that slipped through despite his containment efforts. Flamel listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed a deep understanding of both mind magic and dark arts. Finally, he nodded thoughtfully. What you describe is consistent with my theory, he told the adults. The fragment appears to be exactly what we feared, a portion of consciousness separated from its source, parasitically attached to Harry's own magical core. A soul fragment? Jean asked, his normally calm demeanor strained. Most likely, Flamel confirmed grimly, though corrupted and incomplete. Soul fragment? Harry questioned, looking between the adults. You mean, part of Voldemort's soul is in my scar? The blunt question created a moment of uncomfortable silence before Flamel answered directly. Yes, Harry. That is precisely what we believe. When the killing curse rebounded that night, it appears to have shattered Voldemort's already damaged soul, with a fragment attaching to the nearest living vessel, you. Harry's mind reeled with the implications. So he's inside me? Voldemort is inside me? Not exactly. Flamel clarified quickly. What resides in your scar is not Voldemort himself, but a fragment, a splinter lacking consciousness or complete identity. However, it does retain connections to its source, which explains the occasional impressions you receive. Can it be removed? Harry asked, the question that mattered most. Flamel exchanged glances with Apolline before answering carefully. Eventually, yes. But the process would be extremely dangerous if attempted now. Soul magic is among the most volatile and unpredictable branches of the arcane arts. The good news, Apolline interjected, seeing Harry's distress, is that the ancestral bond appears to be naturally counteracting the fragment's influence. The isolation you've achieved through acclimacy, combined with the bond's protective nature, has created a remarkably effective containment system. Nicholas believes this containment will not only prevent the fragment from influencing you but may actually weaken it over time. Jean added, trying to emphasize the positive aspects. Harry absorbed this information, his mind racing. Part of Voldemort lived within him, the dark wizard who had murdered his parents, who had tried to kill him, whose followers still potentially threatened his new family. The revelation should have terrified him, but strangely, having a name and explanation for the darkness he'd sensed brought a certain relief. So what do we do now? He asked finally. Continue exactly as you have been, Flamel advised. Strengthen the bond, refine your acclimacy, and document any impressions you receive from the fragment. They may provide valuable intelligence regarding Voldemort's potential return. Return? Harry seized on the word immediately. You think he's coming back? The adults exchanged another of those meaningful glances that Harry was learning to recognize, the look of adults deciding how much truth a child could handle. The continued existence of these soul fragments suggests Voldemort is not truly gone, Flamel confirmed gently. However, your situation gives us a unique advantage, awareness of his potential return and time to prepare. The knowledge we gain through studying the fragment may be crucial, Apolline added. This is why your mental discipline is so important, Harry. You are not merely protecting yourself but potentially gathering information that could help us prevent another rise of darkness. The meeting continued for another hour, with Flamel examining Harry's scar using various arcane instruments, and teaching him additional techniques for containing and studying the fragment without being influenced by it. By the time the ancient alchemist departed, Harry felt simultaneously burdened by new knowledge and empowered by a clearer understanding of his situation. That evening, during their bond-strengthening session with the absent Fleur, Harry hesitated before sharing what he'd learned with Gabrielle. The youngest Delacour, however, surprised him with her perception. I already knew something dark was there, she informed him matter-of-factly. I could always see it around your scar, like a shadow that doesn't belong. Aren't you afraid? Harry asked, wondering at her calm acceptance. Gabrielle shook her head decisively. Why should I be afraid? The bond is stronger than the shadow. I can feel it pushing the darkness back every day. She placed her small hand on his, silver-blue eyes meeting green with absolute certainty. Besides, you're my brother now. Not his. The bond chose you for us, not for him. Her simple faith, coupled with the warm certainty flowing through their connection, steadied Harry's turbulent emotions. Through the bond, he felt Apolline's fierce protectiveness and distantly Fleur's determined support joining Gabrielle's unwavering acceptance. He wasn't facing this alone. Whatever part of Voldemort clung to him, whatever challenges lay ahead, he had something the Dark Wizard had never possessed, a family bound to him by both choice and magic, their strength flowing into him through connections Voldemort couldn't comprehend, much less sever. For the first time since learning the truth, Harry felt not fear but determination. The darkness within his scar might be a burden, but it was also an opportunity, a chance to understand and ultimately defeat the wizard who had taken so much from him. With the Delacour's support, with the bond's protection, he would turn Voldemort's own weapon against him. The boy who lived was becoming something more, not a mere survivor or unwitting hero, but a wizard growing into his power, surrounded by those who would help him wield it wisely. As winter descended on the Delacour chateau, bringing with it Fleur's return for the holidays and preparations for Harry's first magical Christmas, the foundations laid during these crucial months would prove more important than any of them yet realized. The path ahead would bring challenges, political complications, increasing security concerns, and the inevitable confrontation with Britain's expectations for their reluctant hero. But for now, Harry Potter was exactly where he needed to be, surrounded by family, growing in knowledge and confidence, the ancestral bond strengthening daily as he transformed from the neglected child of Privet Drive into a young wizard coming into his own power and purpose. The boy who lived had found more than survival. He had found a place to truly live. Chapter 3: Paths of Power. The great hall of Hogwarts hummed with anticipation as students gathered for the welcome feast. At the Gryffindor table, 11-year-old Harry Potter sat surrounded by his new housemates, feeling the strange dual sensation of belonging and displacement that had characterized his life for the past 3 years. "Can't believe you're only here for half the year," Ron Weasley said through a mouthful of roast chicken. "Bloody brilliant arrangement if you asked me. Wish I could spend winters in France." Harry smiled, feeling the distant pulse of amusement from Fleur through their bond. She was attending classes at Beauxbatons right now, but their connection allowed her to experience snippets of his Hogwarts arrival. "It wasn't easy to arrange. The British Ministry fought it for months." "Politics," Hermione Granger said knowingly from across the table. She'd appointed herself Harry's unofficial guide to Hogwarts culture, a role he appreciated despite her sometimes overwhelming enthusiasm. "The educational decree allowing split attendance between magical schools hasn't been used since 1847 when Lorenzo Zabini divided his education between Hogwarts and the Venetian Academy." "How do you know that?" Ron asked incredulously. "I read," Hermione replied primly. "Besides, Harry's arrangement was in all the papers this summer. The Boy Who Lives in Two Worlds, that ridiculous Daily Prophet headline?" Harry grimaced at the reminder. His arrival at Hogwarts had been preceded by months of sensationalized press coverage, despite the Delacour's attempts to manage public relations. The political compromise that allowed him to split his magical education, autumn term at Hogwarts, winter and spring at Beauxbatons, had been front-page news across magical Europe. From the head table, Professor McGonagall caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod. Unlike some of the staff who'd regarded his special arrangement with thinly veiled resentment, she had been professionally supportive from the moment he arrived. The same couldn't be said for Professor Snape, whose cold gaze periodically swept over Harry with undisguised dislike. Through the bond, Harry felt Apolline's distant reminder to maintain his occlumency shields around the potion's master. "So when exactly do you leave for Beauxbatons?" Neville Longbottom asked quietly beside him. Unlike most students who bombarded Harry with questions about his famous history or unique educational arrangement, Neville seemed genuinely interested without being intrusive. "December 21st, Harry replied. "After end-of-term examinations. I'll return for the last 2 weeks of spring term and final examinations in June." What he didn't mention was how the arrangement had been carefully timed around the bond's needs. 3 years of living with the Delacours had stabilized the ancestral bond considerably, allowing for longer separations, but the winter solstice and spring equinox remained powerful magical nexus points when proximity strengthened their connection. "Must be strange," Neville commented. "Having 2 schools, 2 sets of friends." Harry nodded, appreciating Neville's perceptiveness. "It is, but I'm getting used to it. Beauxbatons feels like home, I suppose. Hogwarts feels like my heritage." The truth was more complex than Harry could explain to his new schoolmates. His life had become a careful balance between worlds, British and French, fame and family, prophecy and choice. The political compromise that brought him to Hogwarts had been hard-won, the culmination of years of negotiation between the Delacours and the British Ministry. "Mr. Potter requires proper British magical education," Minister Fudge had insisted during one particularly tense meeting. "It's a matter of national importance that the boy who lived attend Hogwarts. Harry's magical guardianship was legally established through the ancestral bond," Apolline had countered firmly. "His primary education will be at Beauxbatons, near his family." The eventual compromise had satisfied no one entirely but had given Harry what he wanted most: connection to both his past and his present. Hogwarts represented his parents' legacy, while Beauxbatons embraced the family the bond had given him. As dessert appeared on the golden plates, Harry felt a subtle warming of the bond. Gabrielle had just awakened in France, her consciousness sleepily reaching for the connection they shared. At 8 years old now, Her control had improved dramatically, but mornings often brought instinctive seeking of the familial connection. Morning, Gabrielle, he thought warmly, directing the sentiment through their link. The bond didn't allow for true telepathy, but with practice, they'd learned to send emotional impressions with increasing specificity. A wave of sleepy affection returned, followed by curiosity about his surroundings. Harry mentally shared impressions of Hogwarts' enchanted ceiling, currently showing a clear night sky with stars beginning to emerge, and felt Gabrielle's delight at the magical sight. "You all right, Harry?" Neville asked, noticing his momentary distraction. "Fine," Harry assured him with a smile. "Just thinking about home." Later that night, as his dorm mates slept, Harry sat cross-legged on his bed with privacy charms ensuring he wouldn't be disturbed. The distance from France made the nightly bond maintenance ritual more important than ever. Closing his eyes, he visualized the now familiar golden threads connecting him to the 3 Delacour women. Apolline's thread pulsed with steady, maternal protection, Fleur's vibrated with fierce, almost predatory vigilance, Gabrielle's danced with childlike joy and intuition. Together they formed a complex weave that had become as essential to him as breathing. 3 years of daily practice had refined Harry's ability to perceive and manipulate these connections. Where once he'd been a passive recipient of the bond's effects, he now actively participated in its maintenance and evolution. Following Celestine's training, he sent purposeful energy along each connection, respect and gratitude to Apolline, solidarity and admiration to Fleur, protective affection to Gabrielle. The ritual reinforced their connection despite the physical distance, ensuring the bond remained strong and stable. Only after completing this did Harry turn to his secondary mental discipline, containing the soul fragment in his scar. The dark splinter that Nicholas Flamel had identified remained securely isolated behind multiple layers of occlumency barriers, visible in Harry's mental landscape as a black thorn embedded in golden light. Years of study had taught him to maintain vigilance without fear. The fragment was dangerous but also valuable, a direct connection to Voldemort that occasionally provided strategic insights through dreams and impressions. "Knowledge is power," Jean had reminded him often. "Even dark knowledge, properly contained, can serve the light." As Harry reinforced his mental barriers, he reflected on how far he'd come from the frightened 8-year-old who'd first felt the bond's awakening. The neglected child from the cupboard had grown into a confident young wizard with 2 magical traditions to draw upon, and a unique family structure supporting his development. Tomorrow would bring his first proper Hogwarts classes, the beginning of a challenging term navigating new relationships, political undercurrents, and the weight of British magical expectations. But tonight, connected to his chosen family across the distance, Harry Potter felt ready for whatever paths lay ahead. "Mr. Potter, a moment please." Harry paused as Professor McGonagall's voice caught him after Transfiguration. 2 weeks into the term, he'd settled into a rhythm at Hogwarts, excelling in most subjects and forming tentative friendships with his yearmates. "Yes, Professor?" McGonagall waited until the classroom emptied before speaking. "The headmaster would like to see you this evening after dinner. The password is sherbet lemon." Harry nodded, unsurprised. He'd been expecting this summons since arriving at Hogwarts. "Thank you, Professor. I'll be there. Your practical work today was exceptional," she added, adjusting her spectacles. "Few first-years achieve such precision in their initial transformations." Harry accepted the compliment with a small smile. "My mother, Apolline, emphasized visualization techniques in my early training. She says transfiguration is as much about seeing possibilities as it is about magical theory." A flicker of surprise crossed McGonagall's face at his casual reference to Apolline as his mother, but she recovered quickly. "Madame Delacour is quite right. 5 points to Gryffindor for excellent application of technique." As Harry left for his next class, he reflected on the various reactions to his unique family situation. Most professors carefully avoided mentioning the Delacours, referring only to his guardians, or family in France. McGonagall, at least, seemed willing to acknowledge his reality without awkwardness. At dinner that evening, he informed Ron and Hermione about his impending meeting with Dumbledore. "Blimey," Ron said, looking impressed. First years hardly ever get called to the headmaster's office. Unless they're in trouble, he added as an afterthought. It's probably about your special educational arrangement, Hermione suggested reasonably. Or perhaps he wants to discuss your progress integrating into Hogwarts. Harry nodded noncommittally, though he suspected the meeting would involve more complex topics. Through the bond, he felt Apolline's attention sharpen at the news, her protective instincts stirring even across the distance. I'll be careful, he promised silently, sending reassurance through their connection. After 3 years as Harry's magical guardian, Apolline had developed a healthy skepticism regarding Albus Dumbledore's motives. The gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office sprang aside when Harry provided the password, revealing a spiral staircase that carried him upward. He took a moment at the top to center himself, ensuring his occlumency shields were firmly in place before knocking. "Enter," called Dumbledore's serene voice. The circular office was just as Jean had described it, filled with whirring silver instruments, portraits of former headmasters, and an overall sense of organized chaos. Dumbledore himself sat behind a massive desk, his long silver beard gleaming in the candlelight, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Ah, Harry! Thank you for coming. Please sit down." He gestured to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "Would you care for a lemon drop?" "No thank you, sir," Harry replied politely, taking the offered seat. He felt a gentle probe against his mental shields, not forceful enough to be considered an attack, but definitely an assessment of his mental defenses. Following Jean's advice, he allowed the probe to encounter his outer shields without acknowledging its existence. The slight raise of Dumbledore's eyebrows suggested surprise at finding such well-developed occlumency in an 11-year-old. The probe withdrew immediately. "How are you finding Hogwarts, Harry?" Dumbledore asked, folding his hands on the desk. "I trust your first 2 weeks have been productive?" "Very much so, headmaster," Harry answered. "The professors have been helpful in accommodating my previous training while integrating me into the standard curriculum. Yes, your unique educational background has created some interesting adjustments," Dumbledore observed. "Professor Flitwick reports you're performing charm work well beyond first-year level, while Professor Snape suggests your potions knowledge has gaps." Harry maintained a neutral expression. "Potions instruction at Beauxbatons follows a different progression than Hogwarts. I'm working to align my knowledge with Professor Snape's expectations." The truth, which Harry wouldn't share with Dumbledore, was that Snape had shown clear bias against him from their first lesson, criticizing his technique relentlessly despite objectively correct work. Jean had warned him this might happen, though he'd been vague about the reasons. "A diplomatic answer," Dumbledore noted with approval. "Your time with the Delacours has clearly instilled political awareness alongside magical education. Living between two magical cultures encourages perspective, sir," Harry replied carefully. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Indeed it does. Which brings me to one purpose of our meeting. The Ministry continues to express concern regarding your divided educational approach. Minister Fudge has suggested a more substantial British presence in your life might be beneficial. The terms of my attendance were clearly established in the educational decree," Harry stated, drawing on the precise language Jean had helped him memorize. "The compromise allows me to honor both my British heritage and my family obligations in France." "Family?" Dumbledore repeated softly. "That is how you view the Delacours?" Harry met the headmaster's gaze directly. "They are my family in every way that matters, sir. The ancestral bond simply confirmed what we would have chosen anyway." A hint of sadness crossed Dumbledore's features. "I sometimes wonder how differently things might have unfolded had the bond not awakened that night. Your mother's sacrifice created powerful protective magic that was anchored in your blood connection to Petunia Dursley." "With respect, headmaster," Harry said, maintaining a respectful tone despite his rising indignation, "that protection proved inadequate against the Dursleys themselves. The bond offered more than just magical protection, it provided care, education, and belonging." "Of course," Dumbledore conceded with a slight inclination of his head. "I do not dispute that the Delacours have been exemplary guardians. My concern has always been for your safety against external threats. The Delacour security measures are considerable, Harry pointed out. And the bond itself provides protection beyond conventional magic. Yes, the bond. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. A remarkable phenomenon, particularly in its manifestation between you and 3 Veela descendants. Has there been any progress in identifying the ancestral connection that enabled it? This was sensitive territory. The Delacour's genealogical research had indeed uncovered the likely connection, but they'd chosen to keep that information private for security reasons. We have theories, Harry answered vaguely, but nothing conclusive. Dumbledore nodded, accepting the evasion. There is another matter I wish to discuss with you, Harry, one of a more personal nature. Through the bond, Harry felt Apolline's distant attention sharpen further. 3 years ago, Dumbledore continued, when the bond first manifested, unspeakable Croaker detected dark magic within your scar. I understand from various sources that this magic has been studied and contained since then. Harry maintained his composure, though inwardly he was surprised by Dumbledore's knowledge of their private research. That's correct, sir. What has the Delacour family told you about this darkness? The direct question required careful navigation. Harry considered how much to reveal, weighing Jean's counsel for discretion against the potential value of sharing information with Dumbledore. They've explained that it appears to be a fragment of Voldemort's soul, Harry said finally, watching the headmaster's reaction closely. Created unintentionally when the killing curse rebounded. Surprise flashed briefly in Dumbledore's eyes, not at the existence of the fragment, Harry noted, but perhaps at Harry's knowledge of it. I see, Dumbledore said quietly. And how has this information been addressed within your family? With practical solutions, Harry replied. The bond naturally contains the fragment, and I've learned occlumency techniques to isolate it further. Nicholas Flamel has consulted on the matter and believes removal will eventually be possible, though not without risk. Dumbledore leaned back, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Nicholas has always possessed unique insight into soul magic. His involvement is reassuring. A silence fell between them, heavy with unasked questions. Harry sensed Dumbledore weighing his next words carefully. Harry, are you aware of the prophecy that was made shortly before your birth? The question caught Harry off guard. Through the bond, he felt Apolline's sharp concern, followed by Fleur's sudden attention joining the connection despite the class she was currently attending in France. Yes, Harry answered honestly. My family thought it important that I understand all aspects of my situation. In fact, Jean had obtained a copy of the prophecy 2 years earlier through his connections at the French Ministry. The Delacours had shared it with Harry when he turned 10, believing he deserved to know the magical prediction that had shaped his fate. Dumbledore seemed to age before Harry's eyes, the perpetual twinkle dimming. Then you understand why Voldemort targeted your family, and why your connection to him remains significant. I understand the original prophecy, Harry confirmed. Though my family believes the ancestral bond may have altered its trajectory. This was a theory Celestine had developed after extensive research into prophetic magic. The unprecedented bond, forming between Harry and 3 powerful Veela descendants, had potentially rewritten the magical destiny outlined in Trelawney's prophecy. An intriguing theory, Dumbledore mused. Prophecies are notoriously fluid until fulfilled. The introduction of ancient family magic like the ancestral bond could indeed create alternative paths. He fixed Harry with a penetrating gaze. What do the Delacours believe the bond has changed about your prophesied confrontation with Voldemort? The original prophecy spoke of power the Dark Lord knows not, Harry replied carefully. The bond creates a magical connection that transcends individual power, a network rather than a single point of vulnerability. Neither can live while the other survives. Dumbledore quoted softly. But perhaps the definition of living and surviving shifts when one's essence is connected to multiple others. Harry nodded. That's Celestine's theory, that the bond fundamentally changes the magical equation between Voldemort and myself. Celestine Delacour is a formidable magical theorist, Dumbledore acknowledged. I have crossed wands with her in magical debate many times over the decades. If she believes the prophecy has been altered, her opinion carries significant weight. The conversation shifted to more immediate concerns: Harry's adjustment to Hogwarts, his educational progress, and the practical arrangements for his transfer to Beauxbatons in December. Throughout, Harry maintained his diplomatic poise, sharing information without revealing the family's more sensitive strategies. As their meeting concluded, Dumbledore regarded Harry with an expression that mingled respect with lingering concern. "You have grown into a remarkably composed young man, Harry. Your parents would be proud of the wisdom you've developed." He paused, then added, "All of your parents, those of birth and those of choice." The acknowledgement of the Delacours as Harry's family seemed to cost Dumbledore something, a concession to a reality he hadn't planned but had come to accept. "Thank you, sir," Harry replied sincerely. "I hope to honor all of their legacies." Later that night, as Harry completed his bond maintenance ritual, he shared detailed impressions of the meeting with Apolline, Fleur, and Gabrielle. Their responses flowed back along the golden threads: Apolline's strategic analysis, Fleur's suspicious caution, and Gabrielle's simple certainty that Harry had handled the situation perfectly. "He knows more than he revealed," came Apolline's distinct impression. "Be vigilant, but not paranoid." "I will," Harry promised, drawing comfort from their connection despite the hundreds of miles between them. As he drifted towards sleep, Harry reflected on Dumbledore's words about the prophecy. The headmaster hadn't dismissed Celestine's theory about the bond altering his destiny. That, perhaps, was the most significant outcome of their meeting: acknowledgement that Harry's path might not be the solitary hero's journey Dumbledore had once envisioned. The boy who lived was now the boy who belonged, and that connection to others might ultimately rewrite the very fate that had marked him since before his birth. Expelliarmus! Harry's disarming charm caught Draco Malfoy mid-spell, sending the blonde Slytherin's wand flying across the dueling platform. Professor Flitwick clapped enthusiastically from the sidelines as the assembled first-years watched with varying reactions: Gryffindors cheering, Slytherin scowling. "Excellent form, Mr. Potter!" the diminutive charms professor squeaked. "Perfect disarming technique with minimal wasted energy. 10 points to Gryffindor!" Malfoy retrieved his wand, gray eyes cold with humiliation. "My father says proper wizards bow before and after dueling," he remarked loudly. "Or perhaps such courtesies aren't taught in France." "Actually," Harry replied mildly, offering a formal bow despite the barb, "dueling etiquette was part of my first-year curriculum at Beauxbatons." Professor Flitwick specified this was a defensive demonstration, not a formal duel, "but I'm happy to observe the traditions if you prefer." His polite response, devoid of the anger Malfoy clearly hoped to provoke, seemed to irritate the Slytherin even more. Over the past 2 months at Hogwarts, Harry had found that measured calm often frustrated his detractors more effectively than any retaliation. "Very sporting, Mr. Potter," Flitwick approved. "Now, who else would like to demonstrate the disarming charm? Miss Granger, perhaps?" As Hermione eagerly took her position against a reluctant Ravenclaw student, Ron nudged Harry's shoulder. "You made that look easy," he whispered. "Malfoy's been bragging about private dueling lessons since first week." Harry shrugged. "It's not about power, just timing and focus." The truth, which Harry couldn't explain to Ron, was that dueling came naturally to him because of the bond. Years of magical training amplified by the Delacour's connection had honed his reflexes and magical control beyond what most first years could achieve. Fleur in particular had insisted on regular practice duels, her competitive nature pushing Harry to develop quick defensive responses. As October progressed, Harry found himself navigating the complex social dynamics of Hogwarts with increasing confidence. The initial celebrity fascination had faded into a more manageable curiosity. His friendship with Ron and Hermione formed the core of his social circle, with Neville Longbottom and, surprisingly, Susan Bones from Hufflepuff gradually joining their study sessions. "My aunt mentioned you," Susan had explained when Harry questioned her unexpected friendliness. "Amelia Bones, she was there the night the bond formed." Said you handled yourself with remarkable dignity for an 8-year-old suddenly thrust into the magical world. That connection to the head of magical law enforcement had proven unexpectedly valuable. Through Susan, Harry received occasional unofficial updates about ministry politics regarding his situation, information the Delacours appreciated in their ongoing diplomatic navigation. The only persistent friction came from Professor Snape, whose thinly veiled hostility made potions classes a weekly exercise in restraint. Despite producing consistently excellent work, Harry never received more than grudging acknowledgement from the potions master. It's not fair. Hermione had protested after one particularly unfair grading session. Your shrinking solution was perfect. I followed your technique and mine turned out better than ever. Some grudges run deeper than reason. Harry had replied with a shrug, recalling Jean's cryptic warnings about Snape's history with his father. Beyond academics, Harry found himself drawn to the Hogwarts library, particularly its restricted section. With a special permission slip from Professor McGonagall, obtained after explaining his advanced research into magical theory, he spent hours exploring texts on soul magic and prophetic bindings, research that complemented the Delacours' ongoing investigation into the scar fragment. It was during one such library session in late October that Harry first noticed something strange. The prickling awareness of being watched, similar to what he'd experienced years ago in the French marketplace, raised the hairs on his neck. Carefully marking his place in prophetic reverberations, when destinies collide, Harry glanced casually around the library. Nothing seemed immediately amiss, yet the sensation persisted. Through the bond, he sent a quick pulse of alertness, receiving immediate responses from Apolline and Fleur despite the late hour in France. As Harry gathered his books to leave, he caught a flicker of movement from the corner of his eye, a shimmer of displacement near the invisibility section that suggested a disillusionment charm rather than true invisibility. Instead of confronting the Watcher directly, Harry followed the protocol Jean had established years ago. He proceeded normally to the library exit, then took a deliberately circuitous route back to Gryffindor Tower, passing through several busy corridors where the presence of other students would make interception difficult. Near the moving staircases, he paused to retie his shoe, surreptitiously activating one of the enchanted tokens Apolline had insisted he carry, a small silver disc that would alert the Delacour security team to potential surveillance. Within seconds he felt the warm pulse of acknowledgement through the bond. Apolline was notified and assessing the situation. By the time Harry reached Gryffindor Tower, the sensation of being watched had faded. Inside the common room, he found Ron and Hermione engaged in a heated chess match, their friendly bickering a welcome distraction from the unsettling incident. "You're looking peaky, mate," Ron observed, glancing up from the board where his bishop was demolishing Hermione's rook. "Library dust getting to you?" "Just tired," Harry replied, dropping into an armchair beside them. "Think I'll turn in early tonight." Once in the privacy of his bed curtains, Harry activated his communication mirror, another security measure insisted upon by the Delacours. Unlike regular magical mirrors that required specific activation phrases, this one operated through the bond itself, responding to Harry's focused intent to contact his family. The mirror's surface shimmered before resolving into Apolline's concerned face. Despite the late hour in France, she was fully dressed and alert. "Harry," she greeted, her accent more pronounced with worry. "Are you secure?" "Yes," he confirmed, keeping his voice low despite the privacy charms. "The Watcher didn't follow me to Gryffindor Tower. Our contacts at the Ministry are investigating," Apolline informed him. "It may be routine surveillance. Fudge has been pushing for protective oversight since your arrival at Hogwarts." "It didn't feel like protection," Harry said, recalling the prickling discomfort. "More like assessment." Apolline's expression hardened slightly. "We've received reports of increased activity among certain circles, former supporters of Voldemort making subtle movements. It may be nothing, but coupled with your recent dreams." She didn't need to elaborate. Over the past month, Harry's dreams had occasionally slipped past his occlumency barriers, bringing fragmented visions, a dark forest, a hooded figure, a sense of desperate hunger. The Delacours had documented each instance, searching for patterns that might indicate Voldemort's spirit was becoming more active. "I'll increase my vigilance," Harry promised. "And I'll avoid isolated areas like the library's restricted section for now." "Good." Apolline's expression softened. "Fleur wishes to speak with you. She's been pacing since your alert came through the bond." The mirror shimmered again, revealing Fleur's face, her silvery blonde hair tied back in a practical braid. At 14, she'd grown more striking over the years, her Veela heritage becoming more pronounced as she matured. "You should have activated the defensive charm immediately," she scolded without preamble. "Not waited until you reached the staircases?" Harry smiled despite her criticism, familiar with her protective instincts. "I needed to assess whether I was being followed or merely observed. The staircases provided better vantage points." Fleur's eyes narrowed, but he felt her reluctant approval through the bond. "Your tactical awareness has improved," she conceded. "But remember, even observation can precede action. The protocols exist for a reason, Harry." "I know," he assured her. "How are things at Beaux Batons?" The conversation shifted to safer topics: Fleur's Advanced Charms project, Gabrielle's latest exploits with accidental magic, and preparations for Harry's transfer to France in December. Through the bond, Harry felt the tension gradually easing from both sides as normalcy reasserted itself. Before ending the call, Apolline returned with final instructions. "Professor McGonagall has been notified of the surveillance concern, discreetly, through our ministry contacts. She'll be watching for unusual activity without drawing attention to her awareness." "Thank you," Harry said, grateful for the invisible support network that constantly worked to ensure his safety. "We are family," Apolline replied simply. "Distance doesn't change that." After the mirror went dark, Harry completed his nightly bond maintenance with extra attention to the protective aspects Celestine had taught him. The golden thread seemed to pulse with renewed vigor, as if the family's concern had physically strengthened their connection despite the distance. For the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, Harry found himself counting the days until December, when he would return to the Delacour chateau for the winter solstice. While he'd grown to appreciate Hogwarts and had formed genuine friendships, the persistent undercurrent of political maneuvering and potential threats reminded him that Britain remained contested territory for the boy who lived. In France, he was simply Harry, eldest son of the Delacour family, with a sister who challenged him to excel and a younger sister who reminded him to laugh. There, the bond wasn't a curiosity or political leverage, but the foundation of a family built on choice as much as magic. As he drifted towards sleep, Harry reinforced his occlumency barriers, determined not to allow Voldemort's fragments any foothold in his dreams tonight. Whatever watched from the shadows would find the boy who lived well protected, not just by ancient magic or political arrangements, but by the unbreakable connections of a family that transcended distance, nationality, and even blood itself. "The forest is forbidden to all students," Dumbledore reminded the assembled school at breakfast on Halloween morning. "Recent reports of unusual activities near the boundaries require additional caution." Murmurs rippled through the great hall as students speculated about the warning. At the Gryffindor table, Harry exchanged meaningful glances with Ron and Hermione. "Unusual activities?" Hermione whispered. "That's rather vague for an official warning." "Dad mentioned something in his last letter," Ron said, leaning forward. "Ministry's been getting reports of magical creatures found dead in forests across Britain, unicorns, mostly. Something's been hunting them." Harry felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October weather. His recent dreams had featured dark forests and a sense of predatory hunger. Through the bond, he sensed Apolline's immediate attention despite the early hour in France. Her connection to him had grown sensitive enough that significant emotional responses triggered her awareness even in sleep. "Has anyone actually seen what's doing it?" Harry asked, keeping his voice neutral despite his concern. Ron shook his head. "Tracks are weird, according to Dad. Like something partly human but moving on all fours sometimes. Gives me the creeps just thinking about it." Halloween proceeded with the expected festivities, spectacular decorations in the Great Hall, special treats at meals, and excited discussions of the evening feast. Harry participated with outward enthusiasm, but internally he remained troubled by the morning's warning and its potential connection to his dreams. During Charms class, while practicing the levitation charm that most students were still mastering, Harry felt a sudden sharp pain in his scar, brief but intense enough to make him lose concentration, causing the feather he'd been levitating to drop. "Are you all right, Mr. Potter?" Professor Flitwick inquired, noticing his grimace. "Just a headache, Professor," Harry replied automatically. "May I visit the hospital wing for a headache remedy?" With permission granted, Harry left the classroom, but instead of heading to the hospital wing, he ducked into an empty corridor and pulled out his communication mirror. "Something's happening," he told Apolline when her concerned face appeared. "My scar just flared without warning, strongest reaction since summer." "Where are you now?" she asked immediately, switching to crisis assessment mode. "Hogwarts corridor, between classes." "I'm perfectly safe," he assured her. "But the timing seems significant. Halloween, warnings about the Forbidden Forest, and now this." Apolline's expression tightened. "The anniversary of Voldemort's defeat." "Yes, the timing is concerning. Our contacts report increased activity among former Death Eaters over the past week, subtle movements, gathering of certain artifacts." "What should I do?" Harry asked, appreciating as always her straightforward sharing of information rather than protective shielding. "Maintain heightened vigilance," she instructed. "Stay with groups, especially after dark. Keep your emergency portkey accessible at all times." Her expression softened slightly. "And remember your mental disciplines. Whatever stirs may be attempting to access the connection through the soul fragment." "I'll reinforce my barriers immediately," Harry promised. After ending the communication, Harry found an empty classroom and spent 10 minutes in focused occlumency meditation, strengthening the containment around the scar fragment. By the time he emerged, the pain had subsided completely, though a lingering sense of wrongness remained. The Halloween feast that evening was as spectacular as promised, thousands of live bats fluttering among floating pumpkins, golden plates heaped with seasonal delicacies, and enchanted skeletons performing dance numbers between courses. Harry participated in the festivities, laughing at the right moments and joining conversations, but remained subtly alert to his surroundings. Through the bond, he could feel similar vigilance from the Delacours despite their distance, Apolline monitoring security reports, Fleur maintaining a heightened connection to Harry, even young Gabrielle with her enhanced sensitivity reaching out periodically to check on him. Halfway through the feast, Harry noticed Professor Quirrell was absent from the staff table. The defense against the dark arts professor had been increasingly erratic in recent weeks, canceling classes, appearing distracted during lessons, and sometimes staring at Harry with an intensity that triggered warning signals through the bond. Harry had mentioned these observations to McGonagall, who had thanked him for the information while revealing nothing about whether she shared his concerns. Now, the professor's absence on Halloween, traditionally a full attendance event for staff, struck Harry as potentially significant. He was considering ways to discreetly investigate when the great hall doors burst open. Quirrell himself staggered in, his turban askew and terror on his face. The entire hall fell silent as he reached Professor Dumbledore's chair, slumped against the table, and gasped. "Troll, in the dungeons, thought you ought to know." He then collapsed in a dead faint. The hall erupted in chaos until Dumbledore's magically amplified voice restored order, directing prefects to lead students back to dormitories while staff investigated the dungeons. As the Gryffindors began to file out, Harry felt a sudden, horrible realization through the bond, Gabrielle's emphatic warning pulsing with urgency. "Hermione," he said sharply, grabbing Ron's arm. "She doesn't know about the troll. She's been in the bathroom crying since Charms." Ron's eyes widened with guilt. His harsh words after class had sent Hermione fleeing in tears. "We've got to find her." Slipping away from the Gryffindor procession required minimal effort amid the confusion. Harry led Ron through side corridors, heading toward the girls' bathroom where Parvati had mentioned seeing Hermione earlier. "We should tell a professor," Ron suggested nervously as they moved against the flow of students. "No time," Harry replied, drawing his wand. The troll's supposedly in the dungeons, but we can't risk Hermione trying to return to the tower alone. As they rounded a corner, a foul stench assaulted their nostrils, a mixture of old socks and public toilets that could only mean one thing. Heavy footsteps and a low grunting sound confirmed their worst fears. It's not in the dungeons, Ron whispered unnecessarily as the massive form of a mountain troll lumbered into view ahead of them. 12 feet tall, with granite-gray skin and a tiny head perched atop its boulder-like body, the troll dragged a huge wooden club along the floor. It was moving directly toward the girls' bathroom. Harry assessed the situation with the tactical clarity Jean had drilled into him through years of training. Direct confrontation would be foolish. 2 first-years against a fully grown mountain troll were terrible odds. But Hermione remained unaware of the danger, and the professors were searching in the wrong location. We need a distraction, he decided quickly. Something to draw it away from the bathroom long enough for us to get Hermione out. Before they could implement any plan, however, a high-pitched scream echoed from the bathroom. Hermione had apparently discovered the troll's presence. The creature, hearing the sound, gave a grunt of interest and smashed through the bathroom door. New plan, Harry said grimly, raising his wand. We fight. As they charged into the bathroom, Harry's mind raced through his magical training. Standard first-year spells would be largely ineffective against the troll's magic-resistant hide. He would need to think creatively, using the environment rather than direct offensive magic. Inside, they found Hermione shrinking against the opposite wall, looking ready to faint as the troll advanced on her, knocking sinks off the walls as it went. Confuse it! Harry called to Ron, grabbing a broken tap and throwing it against the wall. The troll stopped, blinking stupidly, then turned toward the noise. Its small eyes fixed on Harry, and it hesitated, its tiny brain struggling to process the new threat. In that moment of confusion, Harry felt the bond surge, Fleur's fierce protective instinct flowing through their connection despite the hundreds of miles between them. With it came not just emotional support but practical magical reinforcement, the unique symbiosis they'd developed allowing her to channel her more advanced magical knowledge through their shared link. Wingardium Leviosa! Harry called, but instead of targeting the troll directly, he aimed at the massive wooden club in its hand. The spell, powered by both his own magic and Fleur's distant reinforcement, yanked the club from the troll's grasp with far more force than a typical first-year levitation charm. The club shot upward, then hovered dramatically above the troll's head as it looked up in dumbfounded confusion. With a flick of his wand, Harry released the spell. The club crashed down with devastating impact, striking the troll directly on its small head. The creature swayed, then toppled forward with a crash that shook the entire bathroom. Is it dead? Hermione asked in a small voice, emerging shakily from under a sink. I don't think so, Harry replied, approaching cautiously to check. Just knocked out. Ron stared at him in astonishment. That was brilliant. Where did you learn to cast Wingardium Leviosa with that much power? Before Harry could formulate an acceptable explanation, the bathroom door burst open again. Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell rushed in, stopping short at the sight of the unconscious troll and 3 first-year students standing among the bathroom debris. What on earth were you thinking? McGonagall demanded, cold fury in her voice. You're lucky you weren't killed. Why aren't you in your dormitory? Surprisingly, it was Hermione who answered. Please, Professor, they were looking for me. I went looking for the troll because I thought I could handle it. I've read all about them. If Harry and Ron hadn't found me, I'd be dead now. The blatant lie from rule-abiding Hermione Granger left everyone momentarily speechless. Harry noticed Snape eyeing him suspiciously, particularly the wand still gripped in his hand. That was an extremely foolish thing to do, Miss Granger. McGonagall finally responded. 5 points from Gryffindor for your serious lack of judgment. She turned to Harry and Ron. As for you 2 gentlemen, well, not many first-years could take on a full-grown mountain troll and live to tell the tale. 5 points, to each of you. For sheer dumb luck. As the professors took charge of the situation, Harry noticed 2 things that troubled him. First, Snape's leg was bleeding, visible through a tear in his robes that he quickly covered when he saw Harry looking. Second, Professor Quirrell seemed oddly focused on Harry's forehead, specifically his scar, with an intensity that made the mark prickle uncomfortably. Through the bond, Harry felt Apolline's urgent inquiry, having sensed the danger and subsequent adrenaline through their connection. He sent reassuring impressions in return, though tempered with caution. Something about this situation felt orchestrated rather than accidental. Later that night, after recounting the full story to an impressed common room, Harry slipped away to update the Delacours via mirror. Apolline's face appeared immediately, tension visible in her features despite her attempt at calm. A troll inside Hogwarts is not a random occurrence, she stated once Harry had explained everything. Such creatures are too stupid to bypass the castle's protective enchantments without assistance. I thought the same, Harry agreed. And Professor Snape was injured, looked like a bite or claw mark on his leg. He wasn't in the dungeons with the other professors when the alarm was raised. And Quirrell's behavior? Increasingly strange, Harry confirmed. He seems particularly interested in my scar. And there's something else. When he's around, the scar sometimes prickles, not painfully but noticeably. Apolline's expression grew grave. These incidents, the forest activities, the troll, Quirrell's focus on your scar, suggest coordination rather than coincidence. Particularly occurring on Halloween, the anniversary of Voldemort's defeat. Do you think Voldemort is somehow involved? Harry asked directly. Could he be possessing Quirrell somehow? It was a theory he'd been reluctant to voice, seeming too fantastic even in a world of magic, but the pattern of evidence increasingly pointed in that direction. It's possible, Apolline acknowledged after a thoughtful pause. The soul fragment in your scar connects you to Voldemort's essence. If some form of his consciousness still exists, it might recognize that connection, explaining Quirrell's fixation on your scar. The implications were chilling. If Voldemort had found a way to possess or influence a Hogwarts professor, Harry was potentially sharing classes with the very entity that had murdered his parents and tried to kill him as an infant. What should I do? He asked, appreciating as always the Delacour's policy of honest communication rather than false reassurance. For now, observe but do not confront, Apolline instructed. We'll accelerate certain security measures and alert our contacts within the British Ministry. Most importantly, strengthen your clemency barriers. If Voldemort is present in some form, he may attempt to exploit the connection through your scar. After ending the communication, Harry lay awake long into the night, processing the evening's events. The troll incident had revealed something significant. Under genuine stress, the bond had allowed Fleur to channel her magic to him across hundreds of miles, augmenting his spell-casting beyond normal first-year capabilities. This development, while advantageous, also raised questions about the bond's evolving nature. If magical reinforcement was possible at such distances, what other capabilities might emerge as they continued to grow and train together? More troublingly, if Voldemort was indeed present at Hogwarts, what might he be seeking? The timing of these incidents suggested a specific goal rather than random malevolence. As Harry finally drifted toward sleep, he maintained his occlumency shields with particular vigilance. Whatever game was being played in the shadows of Hogwarts, he was determined not to be merely a pawn in it. With the Delacour's support and the bond's growing power, the boy who lived would face whatever came not as a destined victim, but as an active participant in his own fate. The weeks following Halloween brought increased vigilance from all sides. Harry noticed subtle security enhancements around Hogwarts, additional wards that tingled against his magical senses, staff members patrolling corridors more frequently, and even Hagrid's boarhound Fawn accompanying the gamekeeper more often on his forest rounds. Whether these measures resulted from the Delacour's behind-the-scenes influence, or Dumbledore's own concerns remained unclear, but Harry appreciated the additional layers of protection. His friendship with Ron and Hermione deepened after the troll incident, their shared experience creating a bond of trust that transcended their different backgrounds and approaches. Hermione's encyclopedic knowledge complemented Ron's strategic thinking and Harry's practical magic, forming a surprisingly effective trio. You're different than I expected," Hermione admitted one evening as they studied in the library. "When I read about you in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts, you seemed almost mythical. But you're just normal?" Harry suggested with a wry smile. "No," she corrected thoughtfully. "Not normal exactly. Just real. Human. With actual training and knowledge instead of mysterious innate powers." "Disappointed?" he teased. "Actually, it's refreshing," she replied earnestly. "The books make it sound like you defeated Voldemort through some special gift or destiny. I prefer knowing it's about hard work and learning, things anyone could achieve with proper application." If only she knew how complicated the truth really was, Harry thought: prophecies, soul fragments, ancient family bonds, and altered destinies. But he appreciated her perspective nonetheless. The wizarding world's tendency to attribute his survival to mystical exceptionalism rather than recognizing the sacrifice of his mother and the ongoing protection of his chosen family was a persistent frustration. As November progressed, Harry's investigation into Professor Quirrell continued discreetly. He noted the professor's increasingly frequent absences, the perpetual trembling that seemed more performance than genuine anxiety, and most tellingly, the way Quirrell sometimes spoke to himself in low murmurs when he thought no one was listening. "There's something wrong with his turban," Ron commented after one particularly odd defense lesson. "Have you noticed he never lets anyone near the back of his head? Fred and George tried to knock it off with a snowball last week, and Quirrell nearly had a breakdown." Harry had indeed noticed, and the observation aligned uncomfortably well with his possession theory. If Voldemort were somehow attached to Quirrell, the turban would provide convenient concealment. Sharing these suspicions with Ron and Hermione, however, proved challenging. Without revealing the soul fragment in his scar or the bond's enhanced perceptions, Harry could only present circumstantial evidence that sounded paranoid without context. "I'm not saying Quirrell isn't strange," Hermione argued when Harry suggested avoiding being alone with the professor. "But accusing him of working with you-know-who is an extraordinary claim requiring extraordinary evidence. Just be careful around him," Harry insisted. "Something's not right, whether it's Voldemort or something else entirely." Beyond Quirrell, another mystery occupied their attention: the heavily guarded third-floor corridor that Dumbledore had declared off-limits at the start of term. After accidentally discovering a massive three-headed dog behind one of the doors while evading Filch, the trio had become convinced something valuable was being protected within Hogwarts itself. Whatever Fluffy's guarding, it must be incredibly valuable or dangerous. Hermione reasoned after researching the mythological Cerberus in the library. Or both. Ron added. "My brother Charlie says Gringotts was broken into over the summer. Nothing was taken because the vault had been emptied that same day. Could be connected." Harry considered sharing these discoveries with the Delacours, but hesitated. Their concern was already heightened due to the Halloween incident. Adding unconfirmed theories about hidden treasures might unnecessarily complicate matters, especially when he had no proof connecting these mysteries to his own situation. As November drew to a close, Harry faced his first Quidditch match as Gryffindor's seeker, a position he'd gained after Professor McGonagall witnessed his exceptional flying during a broom lesson. The Delacours had supported his participation despite security concerns, recognizing the importance of normal school experiences alongside vigilance. "Just remember the protective enchantments on your Quidditch robes," Apolline reminded him during their pre-match communication. "They won't stop direct spellwork, but they'll alert us to any magical interference." The match against Slytherin began well, with Harry's superior flying skills immediately evident despite his first-year status. 15 minutes in, however, disaster struck. His broomstick suddenly lurched violently, attempting to buck him off as if possessed. Clinging desperately to the handle, Harry fought to maintain control as the broom zigzagged erratically, rising higher and performing wild barrel rolls. Through the bond, he felt immediate alarm from all three Delacours, the protective magic surging as they sensed his danger despite the distance. In the stands, Hermione's quick thinking identified the source, Professor Quirrell, maintaining unbroken eye contact while muttering steadily under his breath. Believing she'd caught Quirrell hexing Harry's broom, she rushed to intervene, accidentally knocking over Professor Snape in her haste to reach Quirrell. The distraction broke whatever spell was affecting the broom, allowing Harry to regain control. Minutes later, he caught the snitch in spectacular fashion, nearly swallowing the tiny golden ball in his desperate dive to end the match quickly. As celebrations erupted in the Gryffindor changing room afterward, Harry slipped away to activate his communication mirror. Apolline's face appeared instantly, tight with concern. The protective enchantments registered a high-level curse, she informed him without preamble. Something far beyond student pranks or competitive sabotage. Hermione saw Quirrell maintaining eye contact and muttering. Harry confirmed. She thought he was hexing the broom, which aligns with our suspicions. This is direct action against you, Apolline stated grimly. No longer mere observation or coincidence. The pattern is clear now. That evening, an emergency family council convened through the Mirror Network. Celestine joined from her home in southern France, while Jean temporarily left a diplomatic function to participate. The central question, whether to remove Harry from Hogwarts immediately or continue with the original plan of transferring him to Beauxbatons in December. Immediate withdrawal would alert Quirrell, or whoever is controlling him, that we've identified them, Jean reasoned. It might force them to accelerate whatever plan they're implementing. Leaving Harry in proximity to a potential vessel of Voldemort is unacceptable risk. Apolline countered, maternal protection evident in her tone. The bond protected him today, Fleur pointed out. We felt the attack beginning and were able to channel defensive magic even across the distance. Celestine's silver eyes narrowed thoughtfully. This incident, while concerning, provides valuable confirmation of our theory. If Voldemort is indeed attached to Quirrell in some form, his actions today reveal both capability and limitation. He resorted to physical danger, a cursed broom, rather than attempting mental manipulation through the scar connection. Suggesting our occlumency barriers are effectively blocking that avenue, Harry realized. Precisely. Celestine nodded approvingly. Furthermore, the bond's defensive response was stronger than anticipated at this distance. The magical connection between you four is evolving rapidly. After extensive deliberation, a compromise was reached. Harry would remain at Hogwarts until the scheduled December transfer, but with enhanced security measures. The Delacours would station additional personnel in Hogsmeade Village, ready to intervene if necessary. Harry would avoid isolation, particularly around Quirrell, and would maintain daily rather than weekly communication through the mirrors. Most significantly, they would implement what Celestine called a bond surge, a ritual temporarily amplifying their connection to provide additional protection during the remaining weeks. The surge can't be maintained indefinitely, she cautioned. It will tax all participants, particularly Gabrielle given her age. But for 3 weeks, it should provide an additional layer of defense. That night, after his dorm mates were asleep, Harry participated in the ritual from within his bed curtains. Through the mirror, he watched as the Delacour women formed a triangle around a silver bowl filled with a potion containing drops of blood from each of them, blood collected during the bond's initial formation and preserved for emergency strengthening rituals. As they chanted in ancient Veela dialect, Harry felt the golden threads of their connection thickening, pulsing with increased power. The sensation was simultaneously comforting and disorienting, like being wrapped in a warm blanket while experiencing heightened awareness of his surroundings. When the ritual concluded, the change was unmistakable. Harry could sense the Delacours with unprecedented clarity despite the distance, Apolline's fierce determination, Fleur's analytical vigilance, Gabrielle's intuitive awareness. More practically, he found his magical senses sharper, allowing him to detect enchantments and wards around Hogwarts that had previously been imperceptible. Remember, Celestine instructed before they ended the communication. This enhancement is temporary and comes at a cost. Gabrielle will tire more easily. Fleur's emotional control may be strained. Apolline's attention will be divided. Use the advantage wisely. The following weeks proved the wisdom of their precautions. With his enhanced perception, Harry detected subtle magical surveillance during defense classes, emanating not from Quirrell's wand but from the turban itself, confirming his suspicion that something occupied the concealed space. More alarmingly, he began noticing a pattern of movement throughout the castle. Quirrell frequently disappeared late at night, heading toward the third-floor corridor where the three-headed dog guarded its mysterious treasure. "He's after whatever Fluffy's protecting," Harry informed Ron and Hermione, sharing his observations without revealing his enhanced perceptive abilities. "I've seen him heading that way multiple times after curfew. But what could be so important?" Hermione wondered. "Important enough for a Hogwarts professor to risk his position?" The answer came through an unexpected source, Hagrid's loose tongue during a visit to his hut. Mentioning Nicholas Flamel in connection to the guarded object provided the crucial clue that Hermione needed to identify the treasure. "The Philosopher's Stone," she whispered in the library after days of research. "That's what's hidden in the school. It can transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal." The pieces suddenly aligned with horrifying clarity. If Voldemort's spirit had survived through the soul fragments, the stone would offer a path to full resurrection, a new body, unlimited resources, and immortality to continue his reign of terror. Harry shared this revelation with the Delacours immediately, confirming their worst fears. "We've received intelligence suggesting increased activity among former Death Eaters," Jean informed him grimly. "Subtle movements of funds, acquisition of certain dark artifacts. They appear to be preparing for something significant. Voldemort's return," Harry concluded, the weight of the situation settling heavily despite his young age. "Potentially," Apolline acknowledged. "Though without a physical form, his capabilities remain limited. The stone would change that equation dramatically." With only days remaining before Harry's scheduled transfer to Beauxbatons, tension mounted on all sides. The bond surge had successfully deterred direct attacks, but Harry could sense Quirrell's growing desperation through increasingly erratic behavior in class and more frequent nocturnal expeditions. "Something's coming to a head," he told Ron and Hermione as they studied in the library. "Quirrell's running out of time or patience. Maybe he's afraid of failing whoever he's working for," Ron suggested, more perceptive than his casual demeanor often suggested. "Or perhaps he knows you're leaving soon," Hermione added thoughtfully. "Your transfer to Beauxbatons isn't exactly secret. If he's been targeting you specifically, your departure might force him to accelerate his plans." Her analysis aligned perfectly with the Delacour's assessment, though Harry couldn't tell her so without revealing too much. Instead, he simply nodded. "Which means we need to be especially vigilant these last few days." On the night before end-of-term examinations, Harry's vigilance proved necessary. While completing his nightly bond maintenance ritual, he felt a sharp, unexpected surge through Gabrielle's connection. Her enhanced sensitivity had detected something others missed. "Danger," came her emphatic impression. "Not at Hogwarts." "Coming to Hogwarts." Harry activated his mirror immediately, finding all three Delacour women already gathered in the chateau's ritual room, Gabrielle's eyes unfocused as she channeled her psychic impression. "Something's approaching the castle from the forest," Apolline explained tersely. "Gabrielle sensed it crossing the outer protective boundaries. Dark magic, ancient and hungry." "Voldemort?" Harry asked, his heartbeat quickening. "Not directly," Fleur replied, her expression tense with concentration as she supported Gabrielle's trance state. "A vessel or proxy. Something sustained by unicorn blood." The revelation sent a chill through Harry. According to his magical creature's text, unicorn blood could sustain even the most damaged life force, though at terrible cost to the drinker. "Our security team near Hogsmeade is mobilizing." Jean's voice came from somewhere off-mirror. "But Hogwarts' protective enchantments will delay their entry." "Alert Dumbledore," Harry suggested, already reaching for his invisibility cloak. "I'll try to warn McGonagall." "Harry, no," Apolline commanded sharply. "Do not leave Gryffindor Tower. The bond is showing us the threat specifically to keep you away from it." But even as she spoke, Harry felt another sensation through their connection, a pulling, an urgency directed toward the third-floor corridor. Something was happening with the stone. It's a diversion, he realized suddenly. Whatever's coming from the forest is meant to draw attention while Quirrell goes after the stone. The adults exchanged alarmed glances, recognizing the strategic assessment was likely correct. Dumbledore's not at the castle, Harry continued, remembering the headmaster's announcement at dinner. He was called to the Ministry urgently. It can't be coincidence. Tonight's the perfect opportunity. Harry James Potter, Apolline said, using his full name in a tone that brooked no argument. You will not pursue Quirrell. Alert Professor McGonagall, but do not place yourself in direct danger. Our team will arrive within 20 minutes. I understand, Harry replied, his tone deliberately neutral. Apolline's eyes narrowed, clearly detecting his lack of commitment through the bond. Harry, I need to wake Ron and Hermione, he interrupted. We'll go to McGonagall together. Before they could protest further, he ended the connection, knowing he would face consequences later but determined to act while there was still time. The bond surge had given him unprecedented clarity. He could literally feel Quirrell's movement through the castle, heading toward the third-floor corridor with determined purpose. Waking his friends proved easier than expected. Both were still dressed and studying in the common room despite the late hour. Harry quickly explained his suspicions, carefully framing them as deductions rather than bond-enhanced knowledge. We need to tell McGonagall immediately, Hermione insisted. This is far beyond what 3 first years should handle. Agreed, Harry said, surprising her with his ready acquiescence. But we need to hurry. Quirrell's already got a head start. As they rushed toward McGonagall's office, Harry felt multiple tensions through the bond: Apolline's frustrated concern, Fleur's strategic calculations, Gabrielle's continued psychic monitoring of the forest intruder. They were mobilizing all available resources, but distance created inevitable delays. McGonagall's reaction to their urgent warning was predictably skeptical. The Philosopher's Stone is perfectly well protected, she assured them after hearing their breathless explanation. Professor Dumbledore will return shortly. Now, back to your dormitory immediately. She doesn't believe us, Ron stated the obvious as they were ushered from her office. Then we have to do something ourselves, Harry decided, leading them toward the third-floor corridor. Quirrell's already past Fluffy, I'm certain of it. How could you possibly know that? Hermione demanded. Harry hesitated, then offered a partial truth. The Delacour bond gives me certain awareness of magical activities. I can sense him moving through the protections. It was the first time he'd explicitly revealed the bond capability to his friends. Hermione's eyes widened with fascination despite the dire circumstances. That's extraordinarily advanced magic, she breathed. Family bonds are mentioned in ancient magical connections, but they're incredibly rare and usually only convey emotional impressions, not spatial awareness. Fascinating academic discussion for later, Ron interrupted practically. Right now, we need to stop a possessed professor from stealing the Philosopher's Stone. The three-headed dog presented their first challenge, though Harry's enhanced perception allowed him to detect the enchanted harp Quirrell had left playing to keep the beast asleep. They slipped past carefully, dropping through the trapdoor into the subsequent challenges. Devil's Snare, Flying Keys, a giant wizard's chess set. Each obstacle tested different skills, forcing the trio to work together despite their limited magical education. Through the bond, Harry felt the Delacour's growing alarm as they sensed his progression deeper into danger, but also their reluctant strategic support, channeling suggestions and magical reinforcement when needed. When they reached the logic puzzle guarding the final chamber, only enough potion remained for one person to proceed. It has to be me, Harry told his friends firmly. The Delacours are sending help, but someone needs to slow Quirrell down until they arrive. Be careful, Hermione pleaded, hugging him fiercely. Whatever's possessing Quirrell is extremely dangerous. I know exactly what's possessing him, Harry replied grimly. And I've been preparing to face it for 3 years. Swallowing the potion, he stepped through the black flames into the final chamber, where, as expected, Professor Quirrell stood before the mirror of Ariste, not trembling or stuttering, but standing tall with focused determination. I wondered if you would join us, Potter, Quirrell said without turning, his voice lacking its usual quaver. Somehow I knew you'd figured it out. It wasn't difficult, Harry replied, maintaining his distance while assessing the situation. Through the bond, he could feel the Delacour's security team penetrating Hogwarts' outer boundaries. Help was coming, but not immediately. The stuttering was a bit overdone, especially when you forgot to maintain it while cursing my broomstick. Quirrell turned, a cold smile replacing his usual nervous expression. Observant child. So unlike your foolish father. Where is he? Harry asked directly, seeing no point in pretense. I know you're carrying Voldemort somehow. A high, cold laugh that didn't come from Quirrell's mouth sent chills down Harry's spine. Perceptive as well as observant. Your new family has trained you well, Harry Potter. Slowly, Quirrell began unwinding his turban, revealing what Harry had suspected but dreaded confirming, a second face growing from the back of Quirrell's head. Chalky white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, it was barely human, more a terrible approximation formed of corrupted magic. Voldemort, Harry acknowledged, maintaining his composure despite the horror before him. See what I have become, the face whispered. Shadow and vapor, possessing another's body to take physical form. Unicorn blood has sustained me, but the stone will restore me fully. Harry felt the bond surge intensify as the Delacours sensed his direct confrontation with their family's greatest enemy. Through their connection, power flowed, Apolline's protective strength, Fleur's fierce combative energy, Gabrielle's intuitive magic. The golden threads binding them seemed almost visible, surrounding Harry with a faint protective aura. The stone will never restore you, Harry stated with a confidence beyond his 11 years. Your soul is too fractured already. Voldemort's red eyes widened slightly, surprised that Harry knew about the soul fragments. Who told you that? Dumbledore? You're not the only one with ancient magic at your disposal, Harry replied, deliberately emphasizing the bond's power. The ancestral bond revealed your secrets years ago. Ah yes, your pretty Veela family, Voldemort hissed. An interesting development, certainly. But ultimately irrelevant. The bond may have given you protection and knowledge, but it cannot change destiny. The prophecy binds us, Harry Potter. Neither can live while the other survives. That's where you're wrong, Harry countered, drawing strength from the bond. The prophecy has been altered. The bond rewrote the magical equation between us. For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Voldemort's red eyes. Impossible. Prophecies are absolute. Prophecies are pathways, Harry corrected, reciting Celestine's teaching. When ancient family magic intersects with prophetic lines, new paths emerge. The bond transformed me from a lone adversary to part of a greater whole. As if in response to his words, the golden threads of the bond brightened visibly around him, creating a shimmering network that reflected in Voldemort's widening eyes. It changes nothing, Voldemort snarled after a moment. Bond or no bond, I will have the stone. Quirrell. On command, Quirrell lunged forward, hands outstretched to seize Harry. But as his fingers made contact with Harry's skin, he recoiled with an agonized scream. His flesh blistered and smoked where it had touched Harry's face. What is this magic? Quirrell shrieked, staring at his burning hands in horror. Fool! Voldemort screamed from the back of his head. Seize him! Seize him! Quirrell attacked again, but this time Harry didn't wait for contact. Drawing on the bond's power, he reached out and deliberately grasped Quirrell's face between his hands. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Quirrell's skin cracked and blackened beneath Harry's touch, his screams echoing through the chamber as Voldemort howled in shared agony. Through the bond, Harry felt guidance from Apolline, push the protection outward, expand it like a shield, and from Fleur, channel it through your hands, visualize it burning away the darkness. Following their guidance, Harry concentrated on the golden energy flowing through their connection, directing it outward through his palms. Quirrell collapsed beneath the assault, his body literally crumbling as the protective magic, born of Lily Potter's sacrifice but amplified by the ancestral bond, consumed Voldemort's vessel. As Quirrell's body disintegrated, A wraith-like form tore itself free, a shadowy approximation of Voldemort's face, howling with rage and pain. For a moment, it hovered before Harry, red eyes burning with hatred. "This is merely a setback," the wraith hissed. "There are other ways, other vessels. And when I return fully, Potter, your bond will not save you or those you love." With a final shriek of fury, the spectral form fled, passing through Harry with a cold that penetrated to his bones. The contact sent a spike of agony through his scar, so intense that darkness claimed his consciousness. The last thing Harry registered before collapsing was the distant sensation of the Delacour security team finally breaching the castle's inner defenses, and closer still, Dumbledore's powerful magical signature entering the chamber. Help had arrived, just moments too late to prevent the confrontation, but perhaps just in time to save his life. Harry awoke in the Hogwarts hospital wing, sunlight streaming through tall windows. Before his vision fully cleared, he sensed rather than saw the presence beside his bed, Apolline, her familiar magical signature unmistakable through the bond. "Madman," he murmured, using the term he'd adopted years ago but rarely voiced in Britain. "I'm here, Mon Fils," she replied softly, taking his hand. The bond pulsed between them, warm and reassuring after the darkness of the confrontation. Opening his eyes fully, Harry found not just Apolline but the entire Delacour family gathered around his bed. Fleur stood at the foot, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering concern. Gabrielle sat on the edge of the mattress, her small hand resting protectively on his arm. Jean stood slightly behind Apolline, his usual diplomatic composure restored now that the crisis had passed. "How long was I unconscious?" Harry asked, his voice rough from disuse. 3 days, Jean answered. "The magical backlash from your confrontation with Voldemort, combined with the strain of channeling so much protective energy through the bond, temporarily overwhelmed your system." Harry nodded, memories of the confrontation returning with crystal clarity. "Quirrell? Destroyed," Fleur stated simply. "The combination of your mother's sacrificial protection and our bond's magic proved lethal to anyone hosting Voldemort's essence. The stone? Secure," Apolline assured him. "Dumbledore arrived moments after you lost consciousness. The stone has since been removed from Hogwarts and returned to Nicholas Flamel for safekeeping, or destruction, he hasn't decided yet." Harry absorbed this information, then asked the question that concerned him most. "Ron and Hermione?" "Perfectly well," Jean replied with a smile. "They've visited daily, though Madame Pomfrey has limited their time. Your friends showed remarkable courage throughout the ordeal." Guilt twisted in Harry's stomach. "I'm sorry for going after Quirrell against your instructions. I couldn't let him get the stone. If Voldemort had returned fully, sure," Apolline interrupted gently. "While we don't approve of your recklessness, we understand your reasoning. The situation required immediate action, and you acted according to your assessment of the threat. Rather Gryffindor of you," Fleur added with a slight smirk, though her eyes remained soft with relief. "How much do Ron and Hermione know?" Harry asked, wondering how his friends had interpreted the visible manifestation of the bond during the confrontation. "We've spoken with them," Jean explained. "Given them a simplified explanation of the ancestral bond and its protective capabilities. They're understandably curious, but have agreed to maintain discretion regarding the details." Harry nodded gratefully. While he'd grown to trust his friends implicitly, the full nature of the bond, particularly its connection to prophecy and soul magic, remained sensitive information best protected from wider disclosure. "There have been political developments," Apolline continued, her tone shifting to something more formal. "Your confrontation with Voldemort, while kept from the general student body, has become known within certain ministry circles. Minister Fudge is publicly denying any suggestion of Voldemort's involvement," Jean added. "The official position is that Quirrell suffered a mental breakdown and attempted to steal a valuable magical artifact for personal gain." "But unofficially?" Harry prompted. "Unofficially, those who matter know the truth," Apolline stated. "Dumbledore has been quietly informing key allies. Amelia Bones is conducting a discreet investigation into former Death Eater activities. And our own ministry has elevated security protocols based on the intelligence gathered. Harry processed this information, understanding the delicate balance being maintained. Public acknowledgement of Voldemort's continued existence, however weakened, would cause widespread panic. Yet preparation for his potential return required informing those in positions to respond effectively. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "With end-of-term exams missed and my transfer to Beauxbatons scheduled, arrangements have been modified," Jean informed him. "Given recent events, we've negotiated an immediate transfer rather than waiting for next term. You'll complete your examinations under Madame Maxime's supervision at Beauxbatons, then rejoin Hogwarts next autumn as originally planned." The news brought mixed emotions. While Harry had formed genuine attachments at Hogwarts, the prospect of returning to the security and comfort of the Delacour chateau held undeniable appeal after his recent ordeal. "Ron and Hermione have been informed," Apolline assured him. "They understand the security concerns and support your early departure, though they'll miss you, of course. Arrangements have been made for summer visits if circumstances allow." Before Harry could respond further, the hospital wing doors opened to admit Albus Dumbledore, his purple robes sweeping behind him as he approached the bed. The Delacours shifted slightly, maintaining their positions around Harry while acknowledging the headmaster with polite nods. "Ah, Harry, you're awake at last," Dumbledore greeted, his blue eyes twinkling. "How are you feeling, my boy?" "Better, sir," Harry replied respectfully. "The Delacours have been updating me on recent developments." "Indeed." Dumbledore conjured a comfortable chair beside the bed, settling into it with a sigh. "A remarkable display of magic you demonstrated, Harry. Few fully trained wizards could have withstood a direct confrontation with Voldemort, even in his weakened state." "It wasn't just my magic," Harry stated firmly, wanting to ensure proper credit. "The bond provided protection and power beyond my individual capabilities." "Precisely what I've been explaining to Minister Fudge," Dumbledore agreed, surprising the Delacours with his ready acknowledgement. "The ancestral bond has proven far more significant than any of us initially realized. It has fundamentally altered the magical equation between you and Voldemort." The headmaster's gaze swept over the assembled Delacours, lingering momentarily on each face before returning to Harry. "Your family has my gratitude, Harry. Their preparation and protection ensured your survival against overwhelming odds." The formal acknowledgement, particularly Dumbledore's deliberate use of "your family" rather than "your guardians," represented a significant shift in his position. Through the bond, Harry felt Apolline's diplomatic assessment, recognition that Dumbledore was extending an olive branch, acknowledging their rightful place in Harry's life. "The events in the Stones Chamber have prompted me to reconsider certain assumptions," Dumbledore continued. "The prophecy may indeed be more flexible than I had believed. The bond's manifestation during your confrontation with Voldemort suggests pathways I hadn't previously considered. The protection will continue to strengthen." Celestine's voice came from the hospital wing entrance, as she made a dramatic entrance, silver hair gleaming in the sunlight. "The bond grows with each challenge, each shared experience. It will reach full maturity when all 4 participants achieve magical majority." Dumbledore rose respectfully as Celestine approached. "Madame Delacour, it has been too long since we last debated magical theory. Perhaps because you typically prefer to be the wisest voice in the room, Albus," she replied with a sharp smile that contained decades of professional rivalry. "The bond's evolution proves what I have maintained for years. Family magic transcends individual destiny when properly awakened and nurtured." Rather than taking offense, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with what appeared to be genuine amusement. "I concede the point, Celestine. Recent events have demonstrated the wisdom of your approach." The conversation shifted to practical matters: Harry's recovery timeline, security arrangements for his transfer to France, and ongoing monitoring of Voldemort's potential movements. Throughout, Harry noted a subtle but significant change in Dumbledore's attitude, a shift from reluctant accommodation of the Delacours to genuine recognition of their essential role in Harry's life and destiny. When Madame Pomfrey eventually insisted on clearing the hospital wing to allow Harry proper rest, Dumbledore lingered briefly after the others stepped outside. "Harry," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. Years ago, when I placed you with the Dursleys, I believed I was ensuring your protection through your mother's blood sacrifice. I failed to consider equally important forms of protection, the kind that come from being truly loved and supported." The admission clearly cost the elderly wizard something in pride, but seemed offered with genuine remorse. "The bond found me when I needed it most," Harry replied simply. "I think maybe that's how it works, magic recognizing need and responding with connection." Dumbledore nodded thoughtfully. "A profound observation, and likely correct. The ancestral bond awakened precisely when you required family most desperately, and when the Delacours, particularly young Gabrielle with her unique magical sensitivity, needed the stability you could provide. We strengthen each other." Harry agreed. "That's what family does." "Indeed." Dumbledore rose, preparing to depart. "Rest well, Harry. When you return to Hogwarts next autumn, I suspect you'll find yourself even stronger, both in magic and in the connections that truly matter." 3 days later, Harry stood on the Hogwarts grounds with his trunk packed, saying goodbye to friends who had become unexpectedly important during his months at the castle. Ron's awkward shoulder pat, Hermione's tearful hug, Hagrid's bone-crushing embrace, each represented connections he'd formed beyond the bond, relationships he valued in their own right. "Write to us from France," Hermione insisted. "I want to hear all about Bosbaden's curriculum. And their Quidditch team," Ron added quickly. "See if their tactics are any good." "I promise," Harry assured them both. "And we'll arrange visits over the summer if possible." As he joined the Delacours at the Portkey Point, Harry felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness at leaving his new friends, relief at returning to the security of the chateau, and a deeper understanding of how his life had been transformed by the bond's awakening 3 years earlier. The Portkey activated with the familiar jerk behind his navel, whisking the family across borders and distances to land gracefully, in the Delacour's case, or less so, in Harry's, on the gravel path before the chateau. Unlike his first arrival, Harry now viewed the magnificent building not with overwhelmed awe but with the simple recognition of home. That evening, after a celebratory dinner welcoming him back, the family gathered in the ritual room for what Celestine called a bond reinforcement, a formal acknowledgement of how their connection had evolved through the confrontation with Voldemort. In the center of the room, a shallow silver basin contained the same potion used during the emergency bond surge, but with a crucial addition: a small vial of ash collected from the chamber where Quirrell had been destroyed. The remnants contain magical signatures from the confrontation, Celestine explained as they formed a circle around the basin. "By incorporating them into the ritual, we acknowledge the bond's triumph over its opposing force and strengthen its protective aspects." The ritual itself was simple but profound. Each participant added a drop of fresh blood to the mixture, then spoke the role they embodied within the bond structure. "I am the foundation," Apolline declared, her voice resonating with power that belied her diplomatic exterior. "The maternal protection that shields and sustains." "I am the sentinel," Fleur continued, her Veela heritage momentarily visible as her eyes flashed silver. "The vigilance that anticipates and counters threats." "I am the heart," Gabrielle said, her young voice clear and confident despite her age. "The intuition that perceives truth beyond surface appearances." When Harry's turn came, the words rose naturally, as if the bond itself provided them. "I am the catalyst," he stated, feeling the truth of it resonate through their connection. "The convergence point where separate strengths become unified power." As the final word left his lips, the potion in the basin ignited with golden flame, rising in a spiral that encompassed all 4 of them before sinking into their skin like liquid light. The bond between them pulsed visibly for several heartbeats, no longer merely threads but a complex weave of golden energy connecting them in patterns too intricate to fully comprehend. When the light finally faded, something had fundamentally shifted. The bond remained as it had always been, a connection of family, protection, and belonging, but now carried an additional dimension. Harry could sense it in the others as well, this new awareness of their collective purpose. The traditional ancestral bond connects family members through shared heritage and magical resonance, Celestine observed, her silver eyes assessing the changed energy between them. But yours has evolved beyond tradition. It has become something new, a conscious alliance of choice and power, shaped by confrontation with its opposite force. What does that mean for the future? Harry asked, instinctively understanding the significance of this evolution without fully grasping its implications. It means, Apolline answered, maternal pride evident in her expression, that Voldemort has inadvertently strengthened the very connection he sought to disrupt. By directly challenging the bond, he forced it to manifest its full protective potential years before it would naturally have matured. And when he returns? Harry pressed, certain after their confrontation that Voldemort would indeed find another path back to physical form. When he returns? Fleur stated with fierce certainty. He will face not a solitary adversary as prophecy originally foretold, but a united family with magic he cannot comprehend or counter. He will lose, Gabrielle added simply, her childish directness cutting through complexity to the essential truth. Because he is alone, and you are not. As the family moved from the ritual room to the comfortable salon for evening tea, Harry reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the neglected child in the cupboard to a young wizard standing at the center of an unprecedented magical alliance, his path had been transformed by a single night of ancient magic and recognition. The boy who lived had become the boy who belonged, and in that belonging had found not just protection but purpose. Whatever destiny had originally been written in prophecy had been rewritten by the bond, not erased, but expanded to include connections Voldemort could never have anticipated. As Harry accepted a cup of hot chocolate from Lizette, surrounded by the family magic had chosen for him, he felt something he never experienced during his confrontation with Voldemort, not fear of what lay ahead, but confidence in who would stand beside him when it arrived. The ancestral bond had awakened when an 8-year-old boy needed family most desperately. Now, strengthened by challenge and choice, that bond had evolved into something even Voldemort must fear, a power built not on domination or prophecy, but on the oldest and strongest magic of all, the unbreakable connection between those who choose to stand together against the darkness. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.